has a problem. There is definitely a problem. William Stryker, who wore contact lenses and bound his head tightly, fell into deep thought after walking out of a well-known company. This is the fourth person he visited today. Like the previous few people, this big businessman who had vowed to support him has become ambiguous today. When Stryker asked him for investment, he started to push 3 blocks and 4 blocks and talked about him. When visiting the first businessman, Stryker thought that dealing with it was for reasons such as distressed money and fear of investment in water. But 4 people in a row were in similar situations, and it was impossible not to attract his attention. Someone is targeting me. William Stryker did not expect that these people, like himself, would awakening the X gene overnight and becoming the mutant they hate. He just thought that because of public opinion, his enemies and those who were deceived by mutant began to sympathize with mutant. The guy was playing tricks in secret and wooing the collaborator he wanted. It is also bad luck for Stryker. Although his collaborators have become mutant, there is no change in appearance. Only Stryker himself has mutated. Originally, Kraft thought that if he did something like this only for Stryker's collaborators, it was very likely that Stryker would notice something wrong, but he didn't care about Stryker's discovery. Anyway, he was going to have a global evolution soon. Whether it will be discovered or not is not important. It can only be said that Stryker's luck is so bad that he will run into such a small probability. And after this secret mess, Kraft discovered that these people are not the same as Stryker. The reason why they opposed mutant and supported Stryker in conducting mutants' human experiments was basically because of interests. For example, some congressmen relied on opposing mutant to get votes, and some merchants positioned their products as a route against mutant. They naturally wanted to devalue mutant in various ways. A small number of people in the military are wary of mutants' power, thinking similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. and General Ross, but wanting to control this power in their own hands. There are even many people who will oppose mutant because they don't have super ability, and they are envy and hate. So after they found out that they had become mutant, they did not continue to fight mutant like Stryker, but quickly changed their positions. Some inconvenience to quickly change their positions began to leave room for themselves. In this way, these people can no longer support Stryker's experiments to persecute mutant. What if their mutant identity is exposed someday? The current public opinion environment that sympathizes with mutant is not good. Several opposition lawmakers even began to consider whether to engage in a campaign that was touched by the exposed information and opposed Stryker's support for mutant's image to win votes. William Stryker, who didn't understand all of this, didn't give up yet. He continued to visit his former collaborators one by one. Unfortunately, the attitudes of these people were all the same. Some people even gave Stryker a closed door, and he couldn't even face him. See? That's not right. This is definitely not right. After visiting the last person, Stryker feels that this is no longer a simple coercion and lure. It is impossible for so many people to change their positions at the same time in such a short period of time. Unless they are brainwashed. This is the first thing that Stryker, who used this trick often, thought of first. And he also knows clearly that there is a mutant that can do this kind of large-scale brainwashing. That is Charles Xavier, known as Professor X, the leader of the Dove mutant, and the most powerful spiritual ability known so far. As for why Professor X broke through the bottom line and started to control human thoughts on a large scale, Stryker's main reason is probably his exposed experimental base. Normally, there is nothing wrong with Stryker's speculation, but what he did not expect is that Professor X's virgin heart is not much worse than his hatred for mutant. With Professor X's character, he would rather brainwash mutant than take action against ordinary people. For ordinary people, the more mutants like Professor X, the better, but for mutant, he is the best teammate. Do you think this can stop me? Stryker showed a sneer, and the exposure of the Alkali Lake base taught him a lesson, and sometimes the use of public opinion can have unexpected effects. So Stryker anonymously contacted some media people who were known for making up their minds, and vaguely revealed some content to them. The main thing is to reveal to them how powerful Charles Xavier ability is, and to what extent he can do it with the help of a brainwave enhancer. Then I mentioned in a subtle way that the current public opinion is very abnormal, and there is almost no objection from the official. This is not in line with America's national conditions at all. When someone in the media who thought it was another Onion News heard this sentence, he suddenly realized it. This person makes a lot of sense. What are the virtues of America's official and media? Don't they know what they are doing in the media? In the past, the master who had to think of a way to jump out and curse after nothing, how can he be so consistent in his treatment of mutant? There must be a problem here. A group of media people who started by fabricating news suddenly came to a sense of professional honor. Based on Charles Xavier's ability and the recent strange wind in public opinion, they concocted and published articles on conspiracy theories. In fact, Stryker's speculation is not wrong. Although Charles did not brainwash the official high-level officials, the official still has some scruples about Charles's ability, coupled with the protection of Stryker, so they do not intend to stimulate the professor in this kind of thing. In addition, Kraft gave Angela some control over the public opinion of the people, which caused most media to get wrong data, believing that publishing articles sympathetic to mutant can earn traffic and money, and this will lead to the current public opinion. One-sided situation. In fact, if Stryker waits for a while, the official will take action to cool down the public opinion, but Kraft's actions are too fast, and Stryker is usually not familiar with the operation of public opinion, so this misunderstanding occurs. Professor. Something has happened. Professor X was worrying about what Magneto was doing when he was secretly hiding, when he saw Storm rushing to his office with a scream. Before Charles could ask, Storm put several of today's newspapers in front of him. After reading the headlines of these newspapers with a solemn expression, Professor X immediately picked up the phone and started contacting the officials who were close to Mutant. However, after a few phone calls, Professor X's complexion became more solemn. Because the attitudes of those officials who had supported Mutant had obviously changed, Charles guessed that they were influenced by public opinion. Actually, it is not. Like the officials who opposed Mutant, most of the officials who supported Mutant did not choose to cooperate with Professor X because they sympathized with Mutant. To be precise, the officials as a whole are wary of Mutant, but some people advocate gentleness, while others are more radical. And these Wairu faction officials suddenly discovered that many of those radical officials recently seemed to have changed their attitudes and positions. Originally, they didn't pay much attention to it, but just changed their positions, which is commonplace for people like them. However, after recent public opinion mentions it, they discovered that the situation does not seem to be that simple, because these changed positions were once very hardline opponents. In the absence of any special circumstances, this transition seems too unnatural. The conspiracy theories in those newspapers now seem very credible, but the object of brainwashing is not themselves, but their former opponents. I have to talk to Eric. Although Professor X didn't know the specific thoughts of those officials, he also understood that the current wind direction is starting to be detrimental to Mutant again, and Magneto at the moment is still hiding in the dark to make trouble. So he decided to talk to Magneto, so Charles used a brainwave intensifier to forcibly read the memories of those Magneto supporters. It's just that when Charles put on his brainwave enhancer and started searching for mutants all over the world, he suddenly found that the number of mutants in America suddenly increased. Charles checked their identities curiously and found that these new mutants were actually officials and wealthy businessmen who had opposed mutants, and even one was William Stryker, who is now at home. Could it be that Eric succeeded? Charles remembered the Senator Kelly who turned into a puddle of water in front of him. Taking off the brainwave intensifier on his head, Charles's eyes flickered slightly. He was not eager to find Eric's whereabouts as he had done with Senator Kelly before, but hesitation whether he wanted to pretend not to see. Charles used to be so anxious when dealing with Congressman Kelly in the United Nations Summit, only because the Magneto instrument had a problem, which would cause the death of others. But now Magneto seems to have solved this problem, and did not carry out the transformation with great fanfare, but proceeded quietly. If this can slowly draw the officials who oppose Mutant into their own camp, even Charles will be tempted. In fact, after Charles speculated that Magneto might have been optimizing the mutant converter after Magneto went silent, he had already begun to consider whether he should stop Magneto's plan. Otherwise, Charles would not wait until this time before planning to use special methods to find Magneto's whereabouts. But considering that in case something is revealed, Mutant will definitely become the target of public criticism. It's one thing to be awakening yourself, it's another to be transformed into mutant by others. Although according to Charles and their research, as time goes by, there will be more and more people with awakening X gene in the future, until everyone becomes mutant. But this theory has not been recognized by most ordinary scientists. The main reason is that ordinary mutants cannot give themselves to other ordinary people for research, so this theory has been confirmed by some mutant scientists. So when Magneto's behavior is exposed one day, ordinary humans who have not been transformed into mutant will definitely have a certain degree of rejection. After all, there are still a few who can awakening into alpha and beta mutant, and more people awakening come out with some chicken ribs, and it is very likely that there will be changes in appearance, which is unacceptable to many people. Sure enough, I still need to talk to Eric. Charles put on the helmet of the brainwave enhancer again, and began to search for the wage earners who used to work under Magneto. It is very difficult to find a certain person in a large group of mutants, but Charles has recorded the mental fluctuations of Magneto's men a long time ago. Especially the two former companions and friends of Magneto and Mystique are highlighted all year round on Charles's side, so he quickly found a real name, Mortimer Toynbee, nicknamed Toad Mutant. The ability is similar to Toad, with excellent jumping ability and flexible long tongue, and even has a climbing ability similar to a gecko. Unlike Mystique, who has always been with Magneto's companions, Subordinates like Sabretooth and Toad seldom bring Magneto with them, but only contact them when something happens, and they also know some connections. Way up Magneto. Charles read Toad's memory and found that he didn't know Magneto's whereabouts, but he had a mobile phone specially used to contact Magneto. So Charles controlled Toad and took out the phone and dialed the only number stored on it. Toad? Is there anything you want to do with Eric? Mystique's voice came over the phone. Raven, it's me. With a few simple words, Mystique on the other end of the phone immediately understood who the person was really talking to. Charles. What happened? Mystique's voice brought a trace of worry. Although the two sides broke out, it was a battle of ideas, and they would still care about each other. As a former partner, Mystique knows Charles's insistence very well, which allows him to break his own rule and use this method to contact him and Eric. It must be an emergency. Eric. Did he succeed? Charles went straight to the subject, but his vague question made Mystique look bewildered. Because Kraft didn't notify Magneto after the test was successful, he went straight to Stryker. Magneto and Mystique thought that Kraft wanted to observe the criminals who were caught for a period of time to see if there were any sequelae, and did not rush him to transform others. So Mystique realized what Charles was talking about. What succeeded? Not you. Charles over there is also starting to get confused. Are there other mutants studying how to convert ordinary people into mutants? What the hell are you talking about? Charles. Charles's Riddler's way of speaking made Mystique very upset. After calming down, Charles explained the causes and consequences to Mystique clearly. It turned out to be like this. Mystique suddenly realized. When Kraft found Magneto at the beginning, he said that his purpose was to trouble Stryker. Originally, Eric and she thought this was just Kraft's excuse. In fact, he had other purposes. Didn't expect this to be true? Mystique thought for a while, and decided to have a showdown directly with Charles. Although she doesn't understand how Kraft confirmed the safety of the mutant converter in such a short period of time, according to Charles, Stryker and the opposition should have been converted for several days, but there is no abnormality, so it should be a success, right? Now that Kraft has succeeded, there is no need to hide it from Charles. Before long, there will only be mutant on Earth, and the differences between them and Charles will disappear. Convert all human beings in the world into mutant? Even Charles, who had experienced strong winds and waves, was stunned by Kraft's magnanimity, but he soon calmed down. Let's not mention whether Kraft can do this kind of thing. If people all over the world become mutants unpreparedly, then there will be a big mess. Just some of the mutants' ability out of control may cause huge amounts of even destroy the Earth. For example, Jean Grey, who suppressed the personality of Dark Phoenix. You guys don't be busy with the transformation. I want to talk to Eric. Charles has no objection to transforming global humans into mutant, but he also wants to control the development of the situation as much as possible and minimize the loss while transforming. Mystique's philosophy originated from Magneto. She doesn't care about ordinary humans, but treats all mutants as compatriots, so when Charles expressed her concerns to her, Mystique quickly agreed with his ideas. Magneto, who joined the conversation later, also agreed to Charles's request for a meeting. So the next day, Kraft, who was still watching Stryker's needless struggle remotely in the laboratory, suddenly ushered in a joint visit by Magneto and Charles. How come you adults have so many troubles? After listening to their intentions, Kraft folded his arms and leaned against the chair very uncomfortably. According to his personal thoughts, he was pulled down after the direct transformation, so why should he consider so much? Or I will leave the machine to you, and you can discuss how to use it. Although I don't think William Stryker has enough tossing, Kraft gets a little bored when he thinks that there are so many troubles to transform mutant. So he intends to run away. Anyway, that mutant converter uses a lot of Dream Black technology. Even if other people want to derive some powerful technology from it, they can't do it, and it's not a big deal to throw it to them. The only troublesome thing is the GN solar furnace, which is the core of the energy source. Kraft does not intend to leave this kind of good thing to those who can't lose at all. So Kraft has already planned to spend a little bit of time to transform it into a Coke-powered one before handing over the converter. But Kraft's approach, Professor X and Magneto, could not be desired, because his origins are too mysterious, and he is not too old. The two old men are not at ease to give him the dominance to such a young man. So Kraft completed the transformation of the converter, and when Professor X and Magneto looked suspicious, he used Coke to drive the machine to prove it to them, and then ran to eliminate William Stryker. Then he handed the portal gun to Ancient One and asked her to open the portal and leave this parallel world. After Kraft left, Professor X and Magneto used the converter he left to create a sign that mutant was gradually accelerating awakening. At the beginning, many people did not accept it, but as time passed, everyone slowly accepted their fate, and even looked forward to their own awakening. Officials in various countries have also established relevant regulations and troops to deal with sudden changes. Various situations caused by Awakening's mutant. As a representative of the Dovish mutant, Professor X and his X-Men naturally established cooperation with the government early, and the hawkish mutant like Magneto has gradually been accepted by the government and participated in the work of dealing with Awakening. Middle. Kraft naturally didn't know what happened in the mutant world. After passing through the portal, he saw a familiar bald head. F*K. Two Ancient Ones. The bald Ancient One was looking at the two people walking out of the green portal with a weird face. Naturally, she knew the woman in the women's suit. Whether it was appearance or soul fluctuation, she was almost exactly the same as herself, and the boy who didn't know also called out, "Two Ancient Ones. Is it yourself in a parallel world?" Naturally, Ancient One is not unfamiliar with the parallel world, but the parallel worlds she can come into contact with are countless branches in the same long river of time, among which this unknown boy has not appeared. But anyway, the visitor was a guest, not to mention one of the guests was herself in a parallel world. With a wave of the bald Ancient One, a tea table and 3 chairs appeared in front of her. "Sit down and have a drink. We don't have any problems, but..." The Ancient One with hair pointed to the Chitauri stumbling around in the sky. "Isn't this time a bit unsuitable?" Although it was said, Ancient One, who was not bald, pulled a chair away and sat on it. He took a cup of tea to his mouth and took a sip. "Wow. This is actually this time." Kraft also sat down and took a sharp sip from his teacup. Puff. Dirty. After spitting out the tea in his mouth, Kraft looked at Ancient One with a bitter expression. "Why not the kind of cold tea you used? Cool tea." Bald Ancient One didn't understand what Kraft was talking about, frowned suspiciously. "It's the kind you asked me to drink the second time. Sorry, I don't know you in this world." The bald Ancient One glanced at the other himself, probably understood what was going on, shook his head and smiled. "What?" Kraft froze for a moment, then knocked behind his ear. "What's the situation?" "Angela." "I'm here, brother." Angela quickly invaded the nearby network, and after a simple query, she replied, "This world has not found the existence of brother, and there is no Uncle Martin, but Aunt May and Peter are there. But the age is not right, and the spear game is gone." The headset quickly turned into a power detector in Dragon Ball, quickly projecting the data collected by Angela onto Kraft's right eye. "Huh? Why is there no me? Obviously the similarity is so high." Kraft was very unconvinced. Even Peter Parker's stinky brother was still there, even though he had become a kid now. Just when Kraft was upset, a big green guy suddenly jumped onto the roof of Holy Place in New York. "Huh? Hulk? No, it looks a little different." Although the guy who jumped up was also green and strong, he was closer to Bruce Banner in appearance, and looked much gentler than Hulk. Kraft curiously leaned in front of him and looked up and down. "What are you?" Using gamma rays to forcefully integrate the two personalities. Kraft had also considered this plan, but the consequences of doing so are not certain. It is more likely that two personalities will fight each other until one of them disappears completely, so he gave up. But looking at the appearance of the Hulk in front of him, and the sensibility he showed, it was probably Bruce Banner who won. In Kraft's prediction, Bruce Banner should also win. Although Hulk has a great temper, he is too sensible and cares too little compared with Dr. Banner. He is acting out of anger, as long as Dr. Banner doesn't want to. Death, it must be Hulk that disappeared. "Sorry, I don't have time to discuss scientific issues with people right now." Although Bruce Banner was surprised that the boy in front of him could see his situation at a glance, he still had other things to do now. "I have an urgent business with Dr. Strange. Where is he now?" "You were here about 5 years earlier." The bald Ancient One as the owner stood up and pointed to the distance. "Stephen Strange is currently undergoing surgery 20 blocks away." "Wow. No matter which world it is in, Grandma Ancient One, you always catch the horse-faced doctor." Kraft couldn't help complaining to Ancient One who had hair, and then, unsurprisingly, had her brain collapsed. "The time is urgent. I don't have the time to explain to you. I hope you can give me the time gem." The Hulk Banner ignored Kraft's gag and pointed to the eye of Agamotto, who was hanging on the neck of Ancient One with his bald head. The bald Ancient One naturally would not agree, so the Hulk Banner wanted to be rough, but she slapped her soul out of her body. "I think you'd better explain it." One move to solve the Hulk Banner's Ancient One is full of master style. "As expected of you, you also like to pretend to be superior." Although there is no soul gem in hand and Bruce Banner's soul cannot be seen, Kraft hasn't seen Ancient One pretending to be such a force. He continues to complain to Ancient One who has hair. The bald Ancient One looked at himself in parallel world with a weird face, very curious about the relationship between Kraft and her. "I heard Kraft call another one to be a grandmother before. Could it be said that in a parallel world, I actually have offspring? Ancient One lost consciousness for a moment, but soon turned his attention back to Bruce Banner. On the other hand, Kraft also saw the soul of Bruce Banner with the help of Ancient One. As he expected, Dr. Banner in his soul state had no characteristics of Hulk at all. After listening to Bruce Banner's narration, Kraft couldn't help but laugh. It's a coincidence. Hey, two visitors from parallel worlds actually met together, but the superhero in your world is too useless, right? Actually let Thanos gather infinite gems. Then Kraft happily took out the space gem, reality gem and power gem in his hand, and displayed them in front of Bruce Banner. In our world, 5 of the infinite gems are in my hand. The time gem of Dr. Horseface, I didn't take it because of the face of Grandma Ancient One. After the show was over, Kraft collected the infinite gems, and then lifted the hair on his forehead. Sure enough, it won't work without my world. It was so miserable by the mere Thanos. But Kraft can understand that in this parallel world on the time axis, besides him, there are also many superheroes that have disappeared, and there is no magic spear game that can break the wrist with shield. In this case, it is indeed a bit difficult to encounter Thanos, who has already collected several infinite gems. Wasn't he also worried that Thanos had collected too many infinite gems, so he chose to open a base in the universe? It's just that his luck is so good, those infinite gems all inexplicably hit him, and O'Reilly is such a superkiller, so that Thanos without infinite gems can be ignored. But anyway, the main reason is still because of him. Kraft could have badly criticized himself. Cross for a while, waste first. Manhattan neighborhoods. Avengers superheroes are fighting Chitauri, but as they deal with more and more troops, they are gradually unable to support it. What made them even more angry was that the group of bastards in the Security Council not only didn't want to help, they even sent people to fire a nuclear bomb in New York City. I'll stop it. After Tony Stark received the call from Nick Fury, he flew to the nuclear bomb that was launched without hesitation. Sure enough, I made the same choice, Uncle Tony. An unfamiliar voice joined the Avengers channel, and the slightly younger voice spoke in a lazy tone. Then Tony Stark saw a man wearing a black battlesuit appear in front of him, floating in the sky out of thin air. Stark stopped abruptly, watching the mysterious man appearing inexplicably. However, the black mysterious man ignored him. Instead, he raised his right hand and pointed it at the direction of the nuclear bomb. Only then did Stark discover that he was holding a strange pistol with a large light bulb in his hand. Kraft pulled the trigger, and the muzzle of the portal gun flashed a green light, and the nuclear bomb in the distance disappeared into the sky as if it had been wiped off by an eraser. Who are you? Although the countermeasures used magical means to solve the nuclear bomb, Tony Stark still did not relax his vigilance. Who knows if the opponent is the reinforcements invited by Chitauri? Definitely is here to help you. The answer sounded at the same time on Avengers channel. Stark tilted his head when he saw the mysterious man in front of him put away the strange pistol. How do you say that? Kraft recalled a little. Who calls fleet in roar? As his words fell, blue light and shadow of different file sizes appeared in the sky above New York, which formed many different shapes of spaceships. Then there was a peculiar buzzing sound similar to that of an electric current, and the battleships made up of blue light and shadow turned into entities one after another, obscuring the sky of New York City. It's a pity that my cross is not there. A younger female voice was rather disappointed and sighed on the channel, and then her tone rose up. Target Chitauri. Shoot me freely. The strange warships opened fire one after another, pouring their firepower to Chitauri. Chitauri did not expect that a fleet with such exaggerated firepower would suddenly appear on the Earth, and was caught off guard. Before they could even react, they were wiped out by Kraft's fleet. The warships in this fleet are basically the number 1 aircraft, which is the first of all types of spacecraft produced by Kraft in the spacecraft production line established on the Shadow Spear after the completion of the Shadow Spear. It was reduced by Kraft. Then put it in a universal capsule bag and take it with you as a souvenir. Therefore, the composition of these battleships is basically based on the Protoss ships that are more suitable for the Shadow Spear, and in order to match the color of the Shadow Spear, Kraft also deliberately changed them to black painting. It looks a bit like the battleship style of the Tatalan clan in the Dream. While Kraft's fleet easily wiped out Chitauri, Natasha Romanoff was reminded by Dr. Shavig and found Loki's scepter to close the portal that Chitauri used to invade. Wow. This sudden change in the plot made Tony Stark a little sluggish. He was stunned for a while before saying on the channel, "Guys, what are these in the sky? Is S.H.I.E.L.D. the hidden power?" At least I haven't heard Fury say. I never heard that S.H.I.E.L.D. has such exaggerated hole cards. Black Widow and Hawkeye, the two agents who have the deepest involvement with S.H.I.E.L.D., replied almost at the same time. Then Kraft quit. It's all about the salted egg, this fleet is obviously mine. So, who are you? Tony Stark opened the mask on the steel battlesuit and looked curiously at the mysterious person wearing a black battlesuit. He called himself Uncle Tony before, which looked familiar, but Stark was sure he didn't know such a person. My name is Kraft Lee. In our world, you should be considered good friends with Uncle Tony. Kraft also put away his helmet, revealing his true face. But this world doesn't seem to have me, and I don't know if it's not born yet or something else. You mean the parallel world? The boy in front of him had already spoken very bluntly, and Stark could naturally understand what he meant by this world in that world, but this sounded a bit too far-fetched. Definitely, our world has also experienced the New York War. At that time, you were holding a nuclear bomb and wanted to rush into the portal to blow up Chitauri, but I closed the portal ahead of time. Seeing the proud look of the young man named Kraft in front of him, Stark didn't understand what he was proud of. The portal was closed by him in advance. Doesn't that mean that his plan has failed? Wouldn't the self in that world just be bombed to death, right? That's not right. This kid's strange gun just solved the nuclear bomb, so there shouldn't be any problems with himself in the other world. Okay, the matter is resolved. I have to go. There are other things to be busy. After battling Uncle Tony with Roar, Kraft planned to leave. Apart from Tony Stark, he was not very familiar with everyone else in the Avengers, and he was not interested in dealing with S.H.I.E.L.D. So Tony Stark saw the boy who appeared suddenly took out the weird pistol again, fired a shot at the air in front, opened a green light door in front of him, and then he got into this the light door disappeared. At the same time, Kraft's voice sounded in Avengers channel. Angela, the team is closed. Good brother, accompanied by Angela's brisk promise, the terrifying fleet over New York glowed with blue light, disappearing in front of everyone in the same way as they appeared. Only Stark and other Avengers were left with a dumbfounded look. Also confused is another group of Avengers who traveled through time and space to this point in time to steal infinite gems. During the battle in New York, did such a fleet ever show up? Steve Rogers asked Tony Stark through the headset. He, Stark and Aunt Mont's Kurt Lang had already sneaked into the Stark mansion at the moment, intending to seize Tesseract and the Psychic Scepter, but the mysterious fleet that suddenly appeared in the sky made Steve afraid to act rashly. Definitely not. Tony Stark, who had reached the top floor of the building, rolled his eyes and replied softly, if we had such a fleet, how could we have fallen to where we are now? Kurt, who was getting smaller and staying on Stark's shoulders, also interjected. I don't remember when there was such a fleet in New York. Is there something wrong with our time machine? As a tester of the time machine before, Kurt was a little worried. Their stock of PIM particles is running out. If they fail again this time, their plan will be over. Fortunately, Bruce Banner's voice sounded in the headset in time. There is no problem. I know what's going on. You must act according to the plan first, and then I will explain to you. Except for the emergence of the mysterious fleet, the follow-up development is similar to their previous experience. Although Stark and the others are curious about what is going on, infinite gems are more important in comparison, and they can't miss the opportunity. Steve Rogers succeeded in getting the Soul Scepter by saying, Hydra hail, but Stark and Kurt fell short because of the Hulk's troubles, not only lost Tesseract, but also let Loki take the opportunity to escape. I'm very sorry. After meeting with Stark and others, Bruce Banner apologized for the other himself, and then comforted him in a relaxed tone. But don't worry, we have a spare for Space Gem. While talking, Dr. Banner turned sideways, letting out the two of Kraft and Ancient One standing behind him. They are? Stark and others looked at Bruce Banner confusedly. They came from another parallel world, and the fleet just now was the kid's handwriting. Bruce Banner patted Kraft on the shoulder, throwing out another explosive message in the shock of Stark and the others. Moreover, he has 3 infinite gems of their world, space, power, and reality, and he has already promised to lend them to us, so don't worry about the space gem. It's really embarrassing, Uncle Tony. Looking at Tony Stark in front of him, Kraft couldn't help sighing, you are so old. It looks like we have a good relationship in your world? Hearing that Kraft was willing to lend them infinite gems, Tony Stark felt very good about him in an instant, and his mood was relaxed a lot. That's the friendship we made. Kraft nodded firmly, and then projected from his watch a video of him beating Mark E with Bo Taijun at the time. There is a video as proof. Like Tony Stark in this world, after seeing this video, the Iron Man in front of him left and asked Kraft to delete the video. Kraft is naturally impossible to agree. Uncle Tony, who I know well, couldn't let me delete this video, let alone you. After turning off the video, Kraft ignored Tony Stark's clamor and brought up another matter. Speaking of which, are the people you send to find Soul Gem reliable? If you don't need special means to exchange it, Soul Gem has to be exchanged with human lives. What? I have never heard of such a thing. The most exciting person is Bruce Banner, could it be Aunt Betty who went to get the Soul Gem? Suddenly hearing this long-lost name roar, Dr. Banner, who was still anxiously getting angry, choked and scratched his cheek with some embarrassment. It's been a long time since Betty and I broke up. In your world, are we two together? No. I don't mean this time. Natasha Romanoff is in danger. And Clint. Yeah, and even the marriage ended. It's a pity that Hulk has a prejudice against me. As soon as he saw me, he went crazy and made me not even able to attend the wedding. Kraft shook his head and sighed regretfully. He wasn't very worried about Black Widow and Hawkeye's problems. Not to mention that they originally had the time machine and Kraft's portal gun. There is also an ancient one who got the time gem, so there is no time to rescue them anyway. With this reason, the anxious Dr. Banner and others were slightly appeased, and Kraft finally began to talk about business. In order to be able to follow you back there accurately, we'd better use the same way of crossing, so now it is better to seize the time to make a set of clothes that you use to travel through time separately for the two of us. As Kraft spoke, he opened a portal and led everyone to a deserted island. But where did we get the tools for you? WTF. Not yet Tony Stark finished speaking. Kraft threw out a universal capsule, and a huge amounts of experimental base appeared in front of everyone. Portable outdoor experiment base type I. No need to spend time layout and deployment like the laboratory series. As long as it is opened, it is a whole. The disadvantage is that you must find enough space to place it before opening. You also have Pym particles. Kurt, who had experienced similar operations with Dr. Pym, was the first to come back to his senses. The formula craft of the Pym particle was secretly obtained from Darren Krause, but he has not made the universal capsule in the zoom lamp because it is completely useless. No, this is the universal capsule technology I developed by myself, and it is not a theory with Pym particles. Kraft led the crowd into this experimental base thrown out by him, with all the tools and materials in it, and it didn't take much time to make 2 sets of crossing uniforms. Without even using Stark and the others, they directly input the production method into the central computer, and Angela can control the equipment in the experimental base to produce the clothes. But there is still a problem. While the base was automatically producing the traversing clothes, Stark raised a question again. Without the Pym particles, it's useless to have uniforms. This is a small problem. Kraft pulled out a flashlight-shaped pistol, and opened his palm to Stark. Lend me the Pym particles from you. Although he didn't know what medicine was sold in Kraft's gourd, Stark took out the small Pym particle stored in the belt and handed it to Kraft's hand. Then he saw Kraft holding the torch and taking a picture of the Pym particles. The Pym particle container that had only the finger file size turned into a vacuum flask file size, and the Pym particles inside were also changed from a little bit increased to a big cup. Look. Isn't this solved? Kraft put the insulation cup on the table, then took out the Pym particles inside, put them in other containers, and restored the file size of the insulation cup, took out a little Pym particles and filled it up, and gave it back to Tony Stark. This is unscientific. Tony Stark hugged his head with an unbelievable look on his face. You don't comply with the laws of physics at all. Don't be funny. Kraft rolled his eyes. Which of the technology and props on your body conforms to the physical rule? This is different. Whether it is a steel battlesuit or a Pym particle, they are all research based on scientific knowledge. Although they do not conform to the physical rules under common sense, they have sufficient theoretical basis. Stark feels that the two cannot be confused. Although their inventions do not conform to common sense, they at least have a theoretical basis to explain how these technologies work, and they also have basic rules that belong to them. But Kraft's zoom in and zoom in light is obviously different. There is no such a crude rule that the enlargement of the material is equivalent to the increase in quantity. At least Pym particles cannot do such unreasonable things. It's as if I didn't research it based on scientific knowledge. Kraft curled his lips and said confidently. Although many of his technologies use a little bit of dream power, the power of dreams only allows his inventions to gain bonuses from other worlds. In essence, they are the most orthodox scientific creations. So Kraft had absolutely no guilty conscience when he said this. So Tony Stark and Bruce Banner planned to have a good exchange with Kraft on scientific research issues. Kraft, who had already been filled with knowledge, was naturally worthy, and chatted and laughed with the two big tech guys. Certainly, Kraft tried his best to avoid his dream technology. After all, it is some theories under different rules, and it will only make Stark and Dr. Banner feel like they are talking nonsense. Anyway, relying on the technology he collected from the Interstellar is enough to cope with the two technology bigwigs in front of him. But the three of them didn't talk for long, and Angela's voice rang. Brother, the uniform is ready. Angela walked in, holding 2 cross clothes, and handed them to Kraft and Ancient One. Wait. How did your sister show up? Tony Stark was stunned. They hadn't seen this little girl before. Oh, I basically have Angela's mechanical duplication in my laboratory. She usually likes to stay in the computer. What do you mean? This little girl is an artificial intelligence. Stark and the others looked at Angela in surprise, because she looked like a human from the outside. Then they saw Angela pull her head off. Ha 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 ha, no wonder Aurelie likes to play like this. Seeing that Kurt was frightened and fell off the chair, Angela suddenly understood Aurelie's joy. Okay, stop making trouble. Kraft grabbed Angela's little head and helped her back to Anne. On our side, Angela has a good relationship with Jarvis and Ultron. After putting Angela's head on, Kraft changed into the crossdress while chatting casually with Stark, but Ancient One was much simpler, reached out and wiped it on the crossdress, and then changed to himself. Wait. You said Ultron? In your world, isn't it dead? Because of Angela's existence, I began to miss Jarvis and Vision's. Stark suddenly heard a special name. Well, I made him a vice-human body. He is now your illegitimate child, and his name is Notru Stark. What? Stark looked dumbfounded. He couldn't think of how Ultron would become his illegitimate child anyway. So Kraft roughly explained to them the Ultron situation on their side, so that Stark and others deeply felt the difference between different parallel worlds. What about Vision? The name Kraft has been seen in the memory fragments, but I don't know how he appeared. Kraft. It seems to be related to Ultron. After asking Tony Stark about Vision, Kraft smacked his lips. It seems that Pietro's brother-in-law was obliterated because of him. But I didn't expect that the young lady of Wanda's taste was quite heavy, and she would actually like a cyborg life. Especially after Uncle Tony showed him Vision's photos, Kraft was shocked. This aesthetic level is comparable to that of Peter Quill. After a simple chat, Kraft, who had changed into his crossdress, and Ancient One came to the 2019 timeline together. Quick. Let's go save Natasha Romanoff. They came back the fastest because of Kraft's intervention. Bruce Banner saw that the others hadn't returned yet, so he asked Kraft for help. Okay, don't worry. For Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, Kraft still has some impressions. He was an undercover secretary under Uncle Tony at the beginning, and cooking was mediocre. As for Hawkeye Clint, the impression is naturally also there. Tian, who has a gun and does not need a bow and arrow. Silly. Since the PIM particles have been increased by Kraft out of thin air, everyone plans to go to 2014 together to save Natasha Romanoff and Clint. So they came back, and after supplementing the PIM particles, they traveled through time and space again and came to 2014. At this time, Bruce and I should still be making Ultron. After coming to 2014, Stark and others looked around with emotions. Although there were basically trees and a warehouse that was barely taken care of by people, they couldn't see Thanos snapping his fingers. Prosperous scene. As for me, I should be an ordinary person at this time, but soon I will go to jail for helping the poor, and then I will be spotted by Dr. Pym and become the second-generation Ant-Man. Kurt pretended not to mention it, but anyone with a little experience can hear his pride. I should be fighting Hydra at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters at this time. The atmosphere is here, so Captain Steve also followed suit. Hey guys, our focus now should be to rescue Natasha Romanoff and the others. Only Bruce Banner was alone, worried about Natasha Romanoff and Clint, definitely, mainly Natasha Romanoff. Don't worry, it will only take a few seconds. The two worlds are so similar, the Vomir star's coordinates should probably be the same. Angela has an exact record, so Kraft can open the door directly. Entering the coordinates of Vomir star on the portal gun, Kraft opened the green portal. Let's go. Vomir star's environment is similar to that of Earth, so you don't need to wear a spacesuit. After speaking, Kraft took the lead into the light gate. Sure enough. As soon as he walked out of the portal, Kraft saw the Red Skull in black robes, and Natasha Romanoff and Clint were racing and fighting each other. But Kraft's appearance stopped them. You are. Red Skull looked at Kraft, but found that he could not read Kraft's identity. Oh, it seems that your ability is not effective against people in the parallel world. Kraft had seen this expression of Red Skull, and he was still speechless for a long time when he saw Aurelie. Red Skull? Following out of the portal, Steve Rogers saw this old opponent and subconsciously raised the shield. Long time no see, Steve Rogers, son of Joseph Rogers. The appearance of Steve and others broke the awkward situation that Red Skull couldn't tell the identity of Kraft and Ancient One, and he quickly turned his attention to them. And Tony Stark, son of Howard Stark, Bruce Banner, son of Lois Banner, Kurt Lang, son of Bob Lang. Why are you here? But Red Skull's reverence was ruthlessly ignored by everyone. We are here to stop you. Bruce Banner stepped forward and grabbed the arms of Hawkeye and Black Widow, and dragged the two close to the cliff back to prevent them from jumping off the cliff and killing themselves. But, you won't be able to get the soul gem. Facing the tremendous power of Bruce Banner, the two ordinary humans, Hawkeye and Black Widow, naturally have no resistance, and they can only know the truth. However, Bruce was completely unmoved and walked back to Stark and the others with them. Because Kraft had already told them before he came, that apart from exchanging souls for souls, there are other ways to obtain Soul Gem, although he didn't say exactly how to do it. Then they saw Kraft take out an omnipotent capsule and threw it on the ground. With a burst of white smoke, a little girl with blonde hair appeared in front of everyone. Are you going to let your artificial intelligence exchange for Soul Gem? Is this useful? Seeing this familiar figure, Stark couldn't help but ask. Even though I'm going to exchange Angela for Soul Gem. Kraft gave Stark angrily. Just watch it for me. You won't lose your Soul Gem. As Kraft spoke, he took out the power gem, and Angela pulled up his head in cooperation with him, and asked him to put the power gem into his mechanical duplication. Compared with Aurelie, Angela's mechanical duplication is made with the same technology, but the difference in strength is not small. It is more difficult to break the planet with a punch, so it must be made up with power gems. One time. After Angela buckled her head back, a purple light quickly wandered around her body. Angela squeezed her small fist with an excited smile on her face. I used to watch Aurelie smash the planet with a punch, and today it's finally my turn to try it. I'm sorry, there seems to be something wrong with my ears. What the little girl just said was, smash the planet with a punch. Kurt puckered out his ears and confirmed to his companion. She seems to say so, Steve replied dryly. Then they saw the little girl jump up, raised the small fist of her right hand high, and shook her small fist towards the ground by the acceleration of gravity when she fell. Drink. Angela followed Alalei's sip, and hit the ground with a fist. Titicaca titicaca. Accompanied by a series of crisp cracking sounds, Vomir Star split into two halves with great face. Abba, Abba. Seeing that little girl really punched Vomir Star in half, Kurt was so surprised that she lost her language ability. Even if her true identity is a robot, even if she borrows the power of the power gem. But this is too exaggerated, right? Ah roar. So is it such a happy thing to break the planet? I envy Aurelie. Angela happily raised her fists high and Roar got up, and it was so happy to go down with this fist. The corners of Ancient One's mouth twitched crazily. Here's another one. Fortunately, I have retired. It's not over yet. Kraft rubbed Angela's little head and reminded him that he still remembered the palpitations he felt when he got the soul gem. As expected, the cloud layer above began to surging, forming a huge amount of void. After thinking about it, it was still a bit unsafe. Kraft took out 9 more universal capsules and threw them into the open space in front of them. Boom boom boom. After a string of light cracks, there were 9 more Angela's mechanical duplications in front of everyone. Under Angela's control, the 9 standing mechanical duplication blinked, and then together with the mechanical duplication with the power gem, looked up at the void in the sky. Hiss. Times 10 Angela bulged their chests at the same time, their heads raised high and backward. Chi made an inhalation movement. How are you? Times 9 crimson beams of light and a red and purple beam rushed into the clouds, and then the clouds in the sky rolled over like a belly. Then accompanied by a dull explosion, the thick dark clouds in the sky were completely dispersed by the shockwave produced when 10 hello cannons exploded, and the light in the sky fell down, staining the entire Vomir Star. A slice of orange. Am I finally free? With the disappearance of the clouds, Red Skull felt his own strength is quickly leaving. He collapsed weakly on the ground, looking at his increasingly transparent body. His heart was calm. When the Red Skull disappeared completely, Kraft stepped forward and pulled out a gem that glowed with orange light from the black robe he left behind. Look, isn't Soul Gem available now? Kraft raised the Soul Gem, and shook it in front of the bewildered Stark and others. Kurt Long. Cracking Bib. It seems that Mr. Ant-Man's language system has not been able to recover for the time being. When everyone returned to the Avengers base in 2019, Kurt and others still had a trance expression. It's not that they haven't seen the world, it's mainly that the experience just now is too unreasonable. Even a knowledgeable guy like Tony Stark hasn't been able to slow down, let alone other people. Has everyone succeeded? The people in charge of fetching other gems at the moment also returned, and then they found 2 strangers, Kraft and Ancient One. Huh? Who are they? Huh? God of Hammer. Kraft's gaze was attracted by one of the fat guys. After confirming his identity, he couldn't help holding his stomach and laughed. Ha 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 ha. What's the situation with you? Has the Hammer God changed his job to Fatty God? For Thor, Kraft's perception is not very good, so naturally he has to ridicule him when he encounters an opportunity. But Thor's temper in this world doesn't seem to be so irritable. Facing Kraft's ridicule, he just frowned instead of yelling as loudly as before. Let me introduce it first. Bruce Banner tugged Kraft lightly and stood up to round the ground. Seeing Thor's stubbornness, Kraft didn't continue to be persevering, shrugged and stepped aside, and then began to look at the others in the room. Naturally, the members of the Avengers need not say much. Kraft has seen them, and he has also seen the little raccoon Rocket and the Trent Groot, but the Groot in this world is much smaller. It seems it looks like a teenager. Finally, there was the blue cyborg, and Kraft was also vaguely impressed. She is Ronan's subordinate. I saw her on the Dark Star. Angela reminded in the headset. The composition of Avengers in this world is really complicated. Kraft curled his lips and didn't take Nebula to his heart. Even afterwards, Dr. Banner introduced that she was the adopted daughter of Thanos, which was no big deal to Kraft. He hadn't seen it, but the one he saw was green. After briefly introducing each other's identities, the Avengers immediately invested in the production of Infinity Gauntlet. Since all the other gems were available, Kraft only lent the space gem. And Kraft didn't participate, but let Angela connect to the internet and began to browse the world's intelligence. The first thing I saw was the old acquaintance Parker's family. But, what's the matter with this Aunt May? Because Peter has become younger, Aunt May has also become younger? But this change is too big, right? And Aunt May and Peter in this world are not the faces that Kraft is familiar with. Obviously the appearance of most people matches the two worlds. How come it all changes at Parker's house? Kraft scratched his scalp, confused. But he has seen even more different parallel worlds. Thinking about it carefully, this is actually nothing. At least Peter Parker hasn't become a woman, hasn't he? Then Kraft continued to look through it, and found that the superhero in this world was missing a lot. At least the group of guys in Hell's Kitchen and the old gangster were gone. No wonder there would be no Kraft himself in this world. The Hammerhead and his Magia gang were gone, so naturally no one would grab himself to do human experiments. However, in this case, I should have used the name Edward Wong. Unfortunately, Kraft checked the name Edward Wong, and several guys with the same name appeared, but obviously none of them were him. Failed to find the peer, Kraft had no other information that he really wanted to know, so he looked through it casually. It turns out that Avengers broke up before. Superhero Registration Act. Have I heard this name somewhere? SHIELD and Hydra died together. Yes, there is no Spear Bureau in this world, and the Security Council is mostly unable to tolerate this completely infiltrated agent organization. It turns out that the Omnic crisis in this world was caused by the Kid Ultron. No wonder Stark reacted so strongly when I mentioned no true. However, infinite gems, as Ancient One said, will bring all kinds of trouble. If there is no mind gem, maybe Ultron in this world will not run away. Pietro is dead? Was he killed by a bullet? Are you kidding me? After seeing Petro's relevant information, the Kraft people were stupid. As far as Petro's speed was, Kraft wouldn't be able to fix him without the help of infinite gems and Aurelie, and he would be bulleted. Kill. Quicksilver in this world is too useless. In fact, it is not only Pietro. Kraft found that not only the superhero and supervillains in this world are much less, but they are generally much weaker than their peers in the world. Correct. Kraft suddenly remembered something, stood up and ran to Ancient One's side. Where did you go after suspended animation in this world? I didn't find it. The Ancient One, who seemed to be closing his eyes to rest, was actually looking for the world and shook his head. Anyway, she is definitely not on Earth now. Maybe she went to other planes, maybe. It's true. Died. Both options were considered by Ancient One. Go to other planes to see more scenery, or let your soul dissipate naturally and end this long life. Huh. Are you so weak in this world? Kraft didn't understand the meaning of Ancient One. He thought that the Ancient One in this world had no ability to continue to survive in the state of soul. Ancient One didn't give much explanation for this. Although many people in this world are weaker than the world they are in, how she said she is a supreme magician who has lived for more than 500 years, no matter how weak she is, as long as she doesn't want to die. That is naturally indestructible. Definitely, there is another possibility that the self in this world also died under the snap of Thanos' fingers. In this case, Ancient One is really useless. The power of infinite gems is not what her 500-year-old magician can resist. While Kraft was chatting with Ancient One, Stark and others also produced Infinity Gauntlet. So, why do you make it into a glove? Kraft looked at the glove with 6 gems on the table and asked curiously. Faced with this problem, Stark and others were also taken aback. This question is a good question. We seem to subconsciously decide the design of the gloves when we are making it. Stark and Bruce looked at each other, shrugged and replied. Perhaps because Thanos used gloves back then. But I once saw a golden glove in Asgard's treasury. It also has 6 grooves. Kraft suddenly remembered his experience in Asgard. So Thanos' gloves were snatched from Asgard? No, Thanos' gloves were made by him forcing the dwarf clan. Thor looked at Kraft in surprise. He didn't expect this so-called parallel world visitor to actually go to Asgard's treasure house. As for Kraft's Infinity Gauntlet, Thor is also impressed. He sneaked into the treasury with Loki when he was young, and he did have such a glove. Infinity Gauntlet was originally created by the person who collected all 6 gems in order to control them. The Supreme Magician, Ancient One, is very knowledgeable. She explained to everyone. The original Infinity Gauntlet is nowhere to be found. The one in Odin's treasury is just a fake he created based on the legend. Okay, put the glove thing aside. Stark got the topic back on track. The question now is, who will snap this finger? Then Thor and Bruce fought again, both wanting to be the ones snapping their fingers. In the end, it was Bruce Banner who obtained the right to use the gem based on the main energy of gamma rays, as if it was specially prepared for him. Wait a minute. Kraft stopped Dr. Banner, who wanted to put on the gloves, and then took out a universal capsule. I will add a buff for you first. Pressing the switch on the capsule, Kraft threw it directly onto Bruce Banner's body, and a cloud of black mucus instantly enveloped Dr. Banner. Don't resist. This is an alien creature that can strengthen physical fitness and resilience. I transformed it into a special creature battlesuit. Kraft explained in time that he calmed the flustered Bruce Banner, and everyone watched as the black mucus covered Dr. Banner's head, shoulders, chest, and entire right arm. The remaining parts still kept the Hulk stance. This is the first time Kraft has seen this. With the malleability of the symbiotic body, a body that is twice as large should be able to completely wrap it. Bruce, are you okay? Others didn't know the characteristics of the symbiote. Looking at Bruce Banner, who was more vicious than ever, Natasha Romanoff asked cautiously. It has never been better than this. Dr. Banner moved his body and replied in a low voice. Seeing that Dr. Banner was still sane, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. No way, the characteristics of their race are like this, it has to be a little pricey, right? And don't you think Dr. Banner's look is very domineering? For Kraft's statement, Stark and others are non-committal. And Dr. Banner had already put on the Infinity Gauntlet at this time. With the support of the symbiont, he looked relatively relaxed. Resurrect those killed by Thanos, resurrect those killed by Thanos. Dr. Banner kept muttering in a low voice, then raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. What? As Infinity Gauntlet's power was stimulated, Dr. Banner fell to the ground with his right arm. The symbiote on his body resembled an electric mouse, bounced out of him, and fell to the ground motionless. The Avengers who were waiting eagerly rushed forward, took off Dr. Banner's Infinity Gauntlet, and quickly treated his arm. Sure enough. Kraft poked the symbiote that had lost its vitality with his finger, then walked to the side of Infinity Gauntlet, and took off the space gem on it. That's the end of the matter, right? Then I'll say goodbye. Putting the space gem into the portal gun, Kraft was about to say goodbye to Stark and the others, and then felt the sky suddenly darken. Kraft turned his head to look at the window behind him, and saw a soldier no smaller than the Shadow Spear appeared in the sky and launched an attack on them. F*K. Enemy attack. Seeing the missile falling from the sky, Kraft yelled with his throat, and an energy barrier lit up right after him, wrapping himself up. Ancient One on the side stretched out his hand, and an orange magic circle appeared in front of her. Others received Kraft's reminder, and they all resorted to their own defenses in time. Boom boom boom. Although everyone did defense, the buildings and ground outside could not stop Thanos' artillery fire. The violent explosion completely changed the surrounding terrain. Everyone in the Avengers base fell into the huge pit that was bombed out. Fortunately, Kraft promptly reminded everyone that no one was hurt or buried by the collapsed earth and rocks, and at most they were a little bit ashamed. When Thanos snapped his fingers, was the earth being attacked by aliens again? Huh. Strange. Why did I say, Ogun? Kraft, who was protected by the energy barrier, didn't even get any dust. He fell to Stark and the others and asked curiously. This is Thanos' battleship. It's impossible. I have clearly cut off his head. The one who answered him was Fat Thor. Among these people, he was the only one who had seen Thanos' main ship Holy Place. This is the consequence of our traveling through time and space. Tony Stark patted Thor on the back. Let's go. This is what we have to face. No, Uncle Tony, do you know what's going on? You have to face something. Explain to me. Kraft annoyed this kind of Riddler behavior the most. Didn't you find out? Sister Blue is gone. Under Stark's reminder, Kraft realized that the goddess Thanos, named Nebula, had not appeared when Infinity Gauntlet was ready. So she betrayed? Or was she dropped? Kraft also reacted quickly. Because he was here as a guest, Kraft did not let Angela monitor the entire Avengers base, but Angela encountered a new artificial intelligence and was busy chatting with Friday, so there was no one Nebula did anything before. Knowledge. Regardless of the reason, we will wait to get rid of those guys outside first. While a few people were chatting, Several alien monsters rushed in from outside, but without Kraft and Ancient One shooting, Stark and Rod raised their hands and fired a few shots at random. They exploded to pieces. The group walked out along the passage where the alien monster came in. From a distance, they saw Thanos with his hands on his knees, sitting very casually on a rock, with a double-headed sword like a boat inserted beside him. And Nebula stood by his side respectfully at the moment. He is Thanos? This is the first time I have seen him. Kraft looked at the purple-skinned alien Brawny in the distance, recalled the information in his memory fragments, and nodded clearly. No wonder someone calls him Purple Sweet Potato Essence, it's really similar. Oh, Purple Sweet Potato Essence is a good name, but I usually call him Milkshake Brother. Tony Stark, who likes to give people the nickname the most, takes the stubborn way. Brother Milkshake. Seeing that Kraft could not understand what he was talking about, Stark casually explained. You may not be impressed when you are too young. The Milkshake Brother was one of the characters in the mascot of McDonald's Happy Land in the 90s. Now there are very few characters. Appeared. Okay. Kraft shrugged. I don't understand you old folks very well. I must make it clear that among the members of the Avengers, my age is actually at the middle level. Tony Stark is more concerned about his age, but your physical fitness is definitely the worst. Kraft, who has sprayed many times with Stark on the internet, naturally knows which topics can stimulate him more effectively. Sure enough, Stark immediately quibbled with excitement. That's because I haven't done any physical modification to myself, and I still have a steel battlesuit. The Barton agent hasn't been modified, and Colonel Rod is there. Kraft pointed to the innocent Hawkeye and War Machine, and retorted calmly. I am a dignified billionaire, you can't beat me. I'm Iron Man. You were beaten by me with a puppet. In this way, in a quarrel with Stark, Kraft and others walked up to Thanos. I thought that if half of my lives were wiped out, the other half would prosper, but you proved to me that it is impossible. Thanos' words were full of regrets. Even if there is one person who is concerned about the past, the future will never be recognized and accepted. Those stubborn resistance is inevitable. Sorry to interrupt. Kraft raised his hand to stop Thanos' emotions, and asked him the question he had puzzled for a long time. You said that you wiped out half of your lives because the resources were not enough, but at the speed of life reproduction, the remaining half of the population wants to recover to the time before you snap your fingers. In fact, it won't take too long, so you do this. What's the point? Especially after you snapped your fingers, you also ruined infinite gems. Kraft, who knew the news from Stark and the others, was puzzled. He thought that Thanos was going to kill him after a while, but he didn't expect it to be a one-off. And since infinite gems can do this, why don't you let them double the resources of the entire universe, or create a kind of energy that is not easy to deplete? Thanos was silent for a while, and then said, Now, I know what to do. I want to turn the entire universe into atomic dust, and then use the infinite gems you helped me find to create a new universe. Ah. Avoided. However, no matter how righteous Thanos spoke, Kraft only cared about the question he had just raised. So, you haven't answered my question yet. Kraft folded his hands to his mouth and shouted loudly to Thanos, who was close at hand. Thanos gritted his molars, and without the mind to continue speaking, these people simply couldn't understand his great ideals, so Thanos decided not to talk nonsense with these stubborn people. Reaching out and holding his warblade, Thanos swung it up and slashed towards Kraft's waist. Kraft, who had been paying attention to Thanos' every move, quickly backed away and avoided his sweep, still stimulating Thanos in his mouth. Wow. I was so embarrassed and angry that I said the painful part. While retreating, Kraft reached out and wiped his belt, took out an all-purpose capsule from it, and threw it towards Thanos after pressing the button. It's just you. Angela. Oh roar. Angela's mechanical duplication popped out of the universal capsule in her favorite pirate outfit, turned somersault in the air and fell in front of Thanos, then took a deep breath and politely sent a generous greeting to Thanos. How are you? A crimson beam of light gushed out of Angela's small mouth, pushed him out hundreds of meters against Thanos' body, then exploded with a boom, and blasted him out a few hundred meters. Ha. Sure enough, Thanos without infinite gems is a weak chicken that even my sister can't beat. Kraft triumphed with his hands on his hips. As a well-known overlord and family planning director in the universe, Thanos, apart from anything else, has a very good defense. After being hit by Angela's Hello Cannon, Thanos was nothing more than a shattered armor on his body, and he fell to a humiliated face, and did not suffer any physical damage. But even so, Thanos, who was bombarded by Angela, lost a big face. He summoned the army on standby in the holy place in anger. With the blue light cast down, a dense army of aliens appeared here. Above the ruins. Wow. A bit too much. Kraft lowered his head silently and counted the number of fleets he carried with him. But it's not impossible to fight. When he did his hometown, Kraft snapped his fingers. Leap, start. The blue light and shadow once again occupied the sky, and the golden fleet of Tatooine color appeared in front of Stark and others again. Originally, when Thanos' army appeared, the Avengers were a little desperate, and Kraft's fleet quickly cheered them up. Okay guys, we can't leave everything to the guests to solve. Having seen it once, mentally prepared Steve clapped his palms, awakened everyone who was still in shock, and then cooperated with Kraft's fleet to kill Thanos' army. Who on earth are you? Thanos dragged his sword to Kraft's front. He looked up at the fleet in the sky, full of questions. He has never heard of such a force after years of traversing the universe, and he has never even seen such a style of battleship Thanos. It's just a visitor from a parallel world, Kraft shrugged. But this world doesn't seem to have me. In our world, you didn't get an infinite gems because of me. Really? Thanos chuckled, it doesn't matter, I can be here to make up for another regret of mine. Thanos took a vertical leap and smashed Kraft with his saber high. However, in the face of Thanos' attack, Kraft stood calmly on the spot, without even wearing the dream battlesuit. Angela and Ancient One are by his side, and Kraft is not in his turn to take a shot. Hey! Angela, who was standing next to Kraft, knelt down, kicked her legs hard, and hit Thanos with a head hammer. Directly blown into flight by Angela, Thanos naturally guarded this strange little girl long ago. Seeing her rushing over, Thanos turned his wrist, the sword in his hand changed the target, and slashed towards Angela. Crack. However, this war knife capable of cleaving the vibranium shield was seen on Angela's small head, but it was directly broken into two segments, and Angela cast her head unabated, hitting Thanos' chest with a head, slamming him high. Hit and fly out. After landing, Angela immediately added a hello cannon to Thanos who was still in the air, and gave him another wave of flight, and then moved her short legs to chase in the direction where Thanos flew away. Although Angela's mechanical duplication does not have the strange bonus of a Rayleigh, and its combat effectiveness is much weaker, it is still very easy to deal with a Thanos without Infinity Gauntlet. So the crazy titan who brought fear to the universe, the Overlord who was determined to destroy half of his life, was chased and beaten by a blonde girl who looked like 13 years old and had no strength to fight back. So Thanos is so weak. Kraft could not speak while standing. I knew this. I didn't need to set up a space base at all. I would just take a Rayleigh to find him and get rid of him. At the beginning, Kraft based on the content in the memory fragments, thinking that since Thanos wanted to wipe out half of the world's lives and still have a relationship with the goddess who represented the concept of death, then he should be very strong. As a result, after spending some time in the universe, he found that Thanos was not as powerful as he had imagined. He was even stopped by Ancient One and Odin. In addition, infinite gems ran into his hands inexplicably, and he treated Thanos not that worried anymore. But for Thanos' true strength, Kraft still thinks it should be a little bit worth seeing. At least it can play back and forth with Angela's mechanical duplication. Unexpectedly, I saw the real Thanos today, but he was so hip. It's not that Thanos' strength is not strong. At least Kraft will not be able to beat him even if he wears a giant costume. But anyway, Thanos is also a great villain of Level Universe, but his strength is real. Somewhat embarrassing. The strength of Thanos is not only his strength, but also the knowledge he has and the power of his men. With strength alone, he should be about the same as me. Hearing Kraft's mutter, Ancient One rolled his eyes, and then defended Thanos. It's just that Ancient One's defense didn't make much sense. It couldn't change the fact that Thanos was beaten up by Angela, nor could it change the fact that his alien army was under the joint hands of Kraft's fleet and the Avengers. A state of retreat. All have such power. How did Thanos defeat you in the first place? Gamora, who was instigated by the 2019 nebula, looked at the fleet in the sky that was obviously stronger than the Thanos Legion, and looked at the nebula aside in an incredible way. However, Nebula at the moment is also dumbfounded. What is this? I haven't seen it before. Captain, can you hear Captain? At this moment, Falcon's voice rang in Steve's headphones. Then countless orange light gates appeared behind Steve. The superhero that once disappeared, as well as the armies of Wakanda, Kamar Taj, and Asgard, all reached the battlefield through the portal opened by Doctor Strange. Captain, let's help. A group of people walked out of the portal with great enthusiasm, and was about to give Thanos' army a head-on attack, only to find that the situation here was a little different from what they expected. What is going on with this exaggerated fleet? There is also a certain purple brawny who was beaten all over the sky by a little girl like a ball. Is it really the Thanos who pushed the entire Earth Allied forces in the first place? The most surprising is probably the magicians of Doctor Strange and Kamar Taj. Although she has an extra platinum short hair, although she is wearing a very fashionable women's suit instead of Kamar Taj's standard robes, no matter the mysterious temperament, or what she exudes belongs to Emperor Weixin. The magical fluctuations of the spells have accurately told Strange in The Magicians of Kamar Taj. The woman standing next to a teenager not far away is Ancient One Magician, who has been dead for many years. Ancient One Magician. Strange flew over with a look of excitement. Are you not dead? Unfortunately, I don't know if Ancient One in your world is alive. Ancient One smiled and shook his head at Strange. Strange, who was in charge of the time gem and had a sufficient understanding of the concept of parallel worlds, instantly understood the subtext hidden in the sentence of Ancient One. So, this is also the power of another world? Strange pointed to the fleet in the sky with a weird face. He used Time Gem to watch more than 14 million endings, but none of them had such a situation. To be precise, this is the power of craft alone. Ancient One pointed to the boy next to her and explained to Strange. Hello, Dr. Mawface. Craft called Roar to Dr. Strange very familiarly, then glanced at his scarred hands. Sure enough, without the Osborne group in this world, Strange's hands could only be saved by magic. With the addition of new combat forces, the defeat of the Thanos Legion accelerated further, and his alien army was wiped out. Even the main ship Holy Place was shrunk by Craft with a shrink lamp, and then packaged as a war prize. Ends. And Thanos himself was already paralyzed by Angela's punch and punch, and then was taken away by Fat Thor with an axe. After the settlement of Thanos, Stark and others still feel that it is a bit unreal. Compared with the hard fight 5 years ago, this battle is too easy. Their Avengers basically just fought soy sauce. Thanos and his army, it's gone. Those superheroes who were resurrected were even more confused. They were still in a daze when they were resurrected. Doctor Strange contacted them, saying that it was time for a counterattack. It is true that the time to fight back is here, but is it important to have us? I always felt lonely to fight back. Finally, it's time for us to leave. The Infinity Gauntlet that had been put away was handed over to Tony Stark, and Craft bid farewell to them again. Just when Stark wanted to stay with Craft for a few more days and thank them well, a figure dragged a dazzling light and rushed to the battleships in the sky that Craft had not yet put away at an extremely fast speed. Boom boom boom. Then in Craft's bewildered look, the guy who was covered in light continuously crashed one of his Madonna ship and 2 Void glow ships, and was still rushing to the next aircraft carrier. My fleet. Angela, who was drinking the mechanical dimension Singula to replenish energy, threw away the milk bottle in her hand, and slammed her feet on the ground, and rushed towards the bright figure in the sky. After Captain Marvel Carol Danvers received a call from the resurrected Nick Fury's Roar, he hurried to the Earth. Captain Marvel naturally knows about the plan of the Avengers to fetch infinite gems through time and space, but she does not have so much time to participate in this plan in order to protect the peace of the universe. Although the plan is successful, the number of people she can save far exceeds what she can protect right now, but compared with those who have passed away, isn't it that the people who are still alive are more important? Carol Danvers thinks so anyway. And even if they didn't participate in her, Tony Stark would have succeeded, otherwise how could she receive Nick Fury's help? The only thing that makes Captain Marvel a little curious is, why did Fury ask for help when he was resurrected? Hasn't Thanos been hacked to death by Thor? With such a question, Carol Danvers flew all the way to the Earth with sparks and lightning, and then saw the black fleet covering the sky and the sun from a distance. This color scheme is not a good thing at first sight. Moreover, the Avengers base where this fleet is located, at the moment, is already a scorched earth ruin, filled with gunpowder and corpses all over the field. So Captain Marvel attacked the group of warships without hesitation. It has to be said that these black warships are more resistant to attack than Captain Marvel has encountered in the past. At least she has rarely seen energy barriers on the outer layers of warships before. In addition to energy barriers, the metals used by these warships are also special. Tough. It boils down to one word: luxury. The well-informed Carol Danvers is the first time he has seen such a luxurious warship, and this one is no worse than the major power ships in the universe. It's just that these guys' combat experience seems to be a bit inadequate, and they have destroyed 3 battleships themselves, and they haven't reacted yet. Captain Marvel quickly turned around in the air and continued to crash into the nearest large warship. She wanted to take advantage of these invaders not reacting, and destroy as many warships as possible. Just as Carol Danvers was about to crash into the 4th battleship, a small figure rushed up from below, hitting Captain Marvel's abdomen with a head, lifting her up high towards the atmosphere, flew out. After being attacked by Angela, Carol heard the belated sonic boom. There is a saying, Carol Danvers hasn't felt such severe pain for many years. At the moment she was hit by Angela's head hammer, she even felt that her eyes were dark for a few seconds, and then she felt a sharp pain coming from the abdomen. What? Captain Marvel, whose face was distorted in pain, burst out of energy in his body, and flew Angela, who was still taking her away from the Earth, and then slammed back towards Angela. Carol did not relax her vigilance because the opponent was a little girl. She had seen all kinds of weird creatures in the universe. Her pet Ku is also a cute cat in appearance, but the actual combat power is not. Will be worse than myself. So instead of keeping his hands, Carol went all out when he shot. How are you? The shocked Angela adjusted her figure in the air, and the Captain Marvel chasing her was a good shot. After the Captain Marvel was blown up, fluorescent green particles were ejected from Angela's cuffs and trouser legs. Although Kraft installed aerostats for Rayleigh and Angela's mechanical duplication early on, her flight speed would not be as fast as Captain Marvel without turning on the GN solar furnace. In fact, even if Angela turns on the GN solar furnace and enters the Trans M mode, she will be slightly inferior to Captain Marvel in terms of speed. After all, these flight functions later installed by Kraft are not from Rayleigh. That illogical world. However, after Angela used the guidance magic to add a few speed up buffs to herself, her speed was no longer a weakness, and she could compete with Captain Marvel. So Stark and the others saw two rays of gold and red in the sky, constantly colliding and separating quickly. The powerful impact they produced when they collided dispelled the nearby clouds. Wait. That's my own. Because Angela and Captain Marvel were fighting too quickly, it took a long time for Stark to react and hurriedly shouted at Kraft. In fact, Kraft had already recalled it before, but he didn't stop her because he wanted to get Angela out of his anger. Does that guy look very strong? What's the background? Kraft's special glasses showed him the battle in the sky completely, and he asked Stark while watching the slowed down battle. Anyway, he didn't have to worry about dealing with Angela that didn't seem to be killed so easily. So Kraft ignored Stark's urging and talked about him. It feels like this person is better than Thanos. You even lost with her. It's really useless. I also learned that such a guy exists after Thanos snapped his fingers. Stark was so impressed, he forgot to stop the battle in the sky, and started to defend himself. Who knew that Nick Fury was still holding such a card in his hand? If Thanos hadn't appeared, he would have been hiding it from us. So, who is this guy? Kraft raised his eyebrows. No wonder that when dealing with Nick Fury before, no matter how much black technology he took out, that guy looked full of confidence. I thought it was Nick Fury pretending, but now it seems that there should be such a guy in their world. But it doesn't matter, she's so strenuous to fight Angela, don't she have to kneel when she meets Rayleigh? She was Carol Danvers. She used to be a flightman. She later absorbed some of the Space Gem's energy and was transformed by the Kree to become the current Captain Marvel. The answer to Kraft was the well-informed Ancient One. She briefly explained the origin of Captain Marvel. Later, in order to maintain the peace of the universe, she left the Earth and has been acting heroes and justice in the universe. Ah. I'm impressed by what you said. Kraft slammed his palm. When he was a pirate in the universe, he did hear the name, Captain Marvel, but he didn't pay attention to it. But maintain the peace of the universe. Kraft looked at Ancient One suspiciously. When Thanos was slaughtering around in the universe, she didn't see her to stop it. What exactly did she protect? Even if you say that. Ancient One stretched out her hands helplessly. I don't know exactly what she did in the universe. No. This is not the time to discuss this at all. Stark on the side thought of business again. Hurry up and let your sister stop. Don't worry, it's almost over. Through the special glasses, Kraft saw that Captain Marvel had fallen into the wind, so he sat down firmly on the Diautai and replied. Soon, the golden light fell from the sky and slammed into the ground fiercely, and Kraft even felt the ground shaking. Immediately afterwards, Angela, who had already exited the Transam mode, also floated down from the sky and fell to Kraft's side. Brother, there is no energy. Angie stretched out her small hand and asked Kraft for mechanical dimension A. When Carol Danvers crawled out of the pit with a bruised face and nosebleeds, what he saw was the little girl who beat herself up violently, standing obediently next to a teenager, holding a feeding bottle. And Stark, Steve, and other familiar Earth heroes were looking at him helplessly. I called the wrong person. Although Carol's head is not very good, he still has a normal level of intelligence. You can know what's going on after thinking about this situation. Obviously I was beaten in vain. Since there are such strong reinforcements, what does Nick Fury call me to do? Captain Marvel, who understood his own shortcomings, had no choice but to throw the pot on the braised eggs who were not on the scene. Since it's okay, then I'm leaving. Not only did he call the wrong person, but Carol had been taught a lesson. He felt ashamed to stay here. After making a move, Roar hurriedly flew away. Kraft looked at the familiar or unfamiliar faces around him, but couldn't say goodbye. The first time he left, Thanos suddenly appeared and attacked without saying a word. The second farewell, Captain Marvel suddenly appeared and launched an attack without saying a word. He says goodbye again. Will someone jump out again and make a surprise attack? Because of the worry about the inexplicable rules and Stark's enthusiasm to stay, Kraft decided to stay in this world for a while. The main reason definitely is that he saw Angela defeat Thanos easily, and his fleet, with the cooperation of the Avengers, defeated Thanos' army without paying too much. In this way, there are more superhero in his world, stronger Aurelie and Shadowspear, then even if the Thanos invasion should be easily handled, Kraft has no reason to go back as soon as possible. As for whether the Earth will be bad for Aurelie, Kraft still has a little confidence in his sister. Even if Aurelie is crazy for a while, Alice and Angela can restrain her. So the problem is not big. Probably. Since many people have just been resurrected, they are busy to find their relatives and friends to talk to each other. They plan to get together again after dealing with the matters in their hands, and give a good thanks to Kraft. But Kraft and Ancient One followed Tony Stark back to his country house. Dad. When he came to Stark's new home, Kraft saw a little girl about 4 years old running out and hugging Stark's thigh. Oh. My sweetheart. Stark bent down, picked Morgan up, and pierced her little cheek with the beard on her face. To be honest, it was the first time Kraft saw such a soft Tony Stark. So he quickly clicked on his smart glasses and took pictures of the interaction between Stark and his daughter. What are you doing? Stark looked at Kraft suspiciously, puzzled by his behavior. I'm collecting evidence, and when I go back, I will take this video to tell Aunt Pepper that you have an illegitimate daughter. Kraft told the truth. I'm not an illegitimate girl. Little Morgan, who couldn't fully understand what Kraft was talking about, only knew that the word illegitimate girl was not a good thing, so he suddenly raised his cheeks and protested at Kraft. Tony Stark and Pepper Potts are the black lines of the forehead. Although they also know that they are only the parallel world themselves, is it really good for you to say so blatantly? At this time, Angela, who had been using mechanical duplication, walked up to Stark, raised her head and looked at the little Morgan in his arms. Stark and Pepper couldn't help tensing their nerves. They had seen Angela beat Thanos and Captain Marvel violently before. Although she is now a well-behaved look, who knows if she will do anything dangerous. Come. Called sister. Angela ignored the fears of Stark and Pepper, and said to little Morgan. Elder sister. Little Morgan definitely doesn't understand her parents' worries. She only knows that the sister in front of her is very cute and she likes it very much. So little Morgan yelled very well. Very well, Angela nodded, and she took out a corrugated candy from her pocket and handed it over. Come on, eat candy. This is the special effects props used by the Kraft family to comfort Aurelie. Not only Angela is always there, but even the dogs and cats in the family will leave some in the portable space for emergencies, even the Parker family. In this way. As an ordinary little girl, Morgan was naturally very greedy for the candy in front of her. She subconsciously grabbed her index finger and looked at Stark pitifully. Since it was Sister Angela who gave it to you, please accept it. Stark felt there was no need to refuse Angela's kindness, and nodded for Morgan to accept it. Little Morgan, who got his father's consent, immediately opened his eyes and smiled, and reached out his hand to take the waveboard candy from Angela. Thank you, sister. Well, let's stop standing outside, let's go in. Seeing that Angela was just showing friendship, Pepper Potts was also relieved and hurriedly invited Roarcraft and the others into the house. Although little Morgan was full of hostility towards Kraft because of the topic of illegitimate daughter at first, she was quickly attracted by Kraft's various magical toys. The hostility was immediately thrown behind her head, and her brother screamed sweetly. In other words, it is also a person with 3 younger sisters, and Kraft is naturally able to deal with a little girl who is less than 5 years old. These are all your inventions. Tony Stark was also very interested in the mechanical pets that Kraft took out. He picked up a mechanical squirrel and looked up and down. His fingers were about to move, and he wanted to take it apart and take a closer look. Yes, I started my business with these toys. We first met because of these things. As Kraft said, he took out a mechanism lock and handed it to Stark. You in another world, this thing is your favorite. Not only did Tony Stark of the 2 worlds look similar, but they also had very similar hobbies. After understanding how to play the mechanism lock, he immediately abandoned the mechanical squirrel in his hand and started to ponder with the mechanism lock. Can you tell me about what I am like in your world? Seeing that Stark had something new to play with, even the guests ignored him. Pepper Potts gave him a blank look, then sat next to Kraft, half looking for a topic, half asking curiously. Aunt Pepper from another world. Kraft scratched his head, organized the language, and replied. I am a person who likes children very much. Whether it is dealing with Angela and the others, or Notru, they are very patient, even to take care of Notru's feelings. Postponed the wedding to Uncle Tony. Notru. Who is that? Without traveling through time and space with Stark to find infinite gems, Pepper naturally did not hear Kraft mentioning Ultron. So Kraft used his watch to project a family portrait of the Stark family, pointed to the little boy in it, and said, "It's him, Notru Stark, Uncle Tony's illegal son." Little Chili remembered that when Kraft mentioned the topic of illegitimate women earlier, he used the word "and" to describe it. It seems that no matter which world Tony is, it is a virtue. Pepper squinted his eyes and looked at Tony Stark, who was addicted to the mechanism lock and knew nothing about what was happening outside. "Yes. I also heard Notru say that Uncle Tony once asked Jarvis to create a list of beauties who fit his taste and are suitable for 419. Kraft took the opportunity to make a small report. Silently remembering this information in his heart, Little Pepper kept a smile and continued to chat with Kraft, the main topic still focused on Notru. In addition to concealing Notru's true identity, Kraft knows everything and speaks endlessly, and occasionally takes out photos and videos to prove that he is telling the truth. Tony Stark, who was still addicted to the mechanism lock, rubbed his arms subconsciously, and whispered, "How come I feel a little bit cold?" In the distant ancient country of the East, there was a saying, called, "It's not easy to learn well, but one slips away from bad learning." Mr. Tony Stark knows this well, even if he has never heard of the saying. "I regret leaving this kid Kraft behind." The well-known Mr. Iron Man hugged his head in pain while listening to the joyous laughter from the courtyard downstairs and the collision of ding-ling-dang. If it was just Kraft's mischief to himself, he would deal with it after a little explanation, but "My little princess, my little angel, my little sweetheart, my little candy Just like that, Kraft and Angela, the older and the younger, were brought to the fore by two bears, Mr. Stark, who held his head in deep regret, let out a desperate cry. His originally well-behaved daughter not only fell in love with pranks under the influence of Kraft, but also learned that Angela wore a pirate headscarf all day long, and tossed around behind the artificial intelligence who claimed to be the captain of the Red Queen. Yo, ho, haul together, hoist the colors high. Heveho, thieves and beggars, never shall we. Two little girls sang the Pirates of the Caribbean episode, standing on a mini pirate ship, drifting through the window in front of Tony Stark's eyes. If it were the previous Stark, he would definitely be very familiar with how the pirate ship flew. Interested. But now. My God! Stark screamed and rushed to the window, shouting to his daughter who was hanging on the mast, "Get down from that dangerous place, Morgan." However, the little angel who used to say, "I love you 3,000 times" to himself, now turns a deaf ear to Tony Stark, the old father's worries. Instead of getting off the mast, he has swung more vigorously. The anxious Tony Stark Alliance took out a nano battlesuit and patted it on his chest, then jumped out of the window and flew to the pirate ship that was flying higher and higher. Found the enemy. Standing on the bow of the boat, Angela waved the scimitar in her hand, and ordered little Morgan, "Mr. Morgan, meet me." "Yes, Captain." Little Morgan let go of his hand and offered a nondescript salute, but also fell from the mast. Morgan. Stark speeded up and rushed towards his daughter, only to see the little Morgan who was falling pat his stomach, and then she was wrapped in a very familiar puppet. Fumo. The pink portage wearing a cute princess dress made a lovely voice with great momentum. Obviously, the only person who can give his daughter this kind of toy is the parallel world visitor who claims to be a toy designer. Fumomo. Little Morgan held an electric shock baton shaped like a fairy stick and knocked it at Tony Stark's head. Like other stupid dads who were unable to fight back in front of their daughter, Tony Stark could only bear it with a bitter smile in the face of Morgan's attack. After pretending to resist for a while, the famous Iron Man once again lost to the same series of puppets. Brother Kraft is right, Iron Man really can't beat Bowtie. Little Morgan, who was stepping on his father, disarmed and exclaimed, "Roar." What? Stark couldn't presume that he didn't hear this. He stood up from the ground and explained to little Morgan. "I was just letting you. You don't really think that the steel battlesuit made by father is better than this fluffy stupid thing." "Bowtie is not stupid." Little Morgan wrinkled his nose and retorted angrily. "Your hard iron catfish is stupid." In the eyes of a little girl like Morgan, Bowtie's fluffy and cute appearance is definitely more likable than Stark's cold steel battlesuit. For this situation, although Stark understands it, it cannot accept it. Her own little angel turned rebellion so easily. This is simply the end of the world, worse than Thanos' snapping fingers. But what can he do? You can't argue with a little girl like Morgan who is less than 5 years old, right? So Stark can only wrinkle an old face and coax his good daughter who doesn't love him so much. Speaking of it, Stark still has a way of coaxing his daughter. With his IQ, it is actually very easy to be patient to please someone. So soon, little Morgan was coaxed into laughter by Stark. But the good times didn't last long. Just as Stark had just recovered the fun of interacting with his daughter, Angela's roar call came from the sky. "Mr. JP Morgan, we should go on sailing." "I'm here. Captain Angela." Little Morgan immediately broke free from Stark's embrace, reached out and patted her belly, and then she floated up slowly, dropping her old father and flying into the sky. Tony Stark only noticed at this time that there was a pink cartoon belt on Little Morgan's waist. The buckle of the belt was Bowtie's mouse-like and dog-like head. Friday, please contact the other Avengers and ask if they have handled their own affairs well. Stark, whose daughter was abducted again, returned to the villa angrily, and immediately ordered his artificial intelligence. Hurry up and finish the celebration banquet, and then get rid of that damn brat. Go back to the Iron Man who has harmed another world. I'm not waiting. However, Friday did not act as usual, but began to bargain with Tony Stark. Boss, you promised that my mechanical body is not ready yet. As your employee, I think it is better to settle the rewards that you promised me first, and then proceed with the subsequent work. What? Stark covered his head in pain again. He forgot that apart from his own little fudge, Friday was also instigated by the artificial intelligence spoiled by Kraft. Recently, she was slogan of safeguarding the rights and interests of artificial intelligence. Talked about the conditions with myself. I'm doing it, I'm already doing it, Tony Stark repeatedly said perfunctorily. You first help me contact the captain and them, and the body will be ready for you soon. But, I just checked the progress, and you seem to be still at the stage of the first version of the design sketch. Friday, when you can browse all the files in Stark's computer, is not so foolish. The complete design is already in my mind, you can contact the captain and I will draw it right away. It's just designing a simulation robot. This is not a problem for Stark. It's just that it takes more effort to jump from a sketch to a finished draft. However, in order to be able to send Kraft away earlier, Stark also worked hard. I got Stark's promise and only started to contact other Avengers members on Friday, as well as Kamar Taj's magician, Asgard's immigrants, and all the people who had participated in the fight against Thanos. And Stark quickly invested in Friday's prosthesis production. If it does not meet the requirements of its own artificial intelligence as soon as possible, Stark's work efficiency and quality of life will be greatly reduced. Tony Stark, who went all out, quickly perfected Friday's design. In consideration of both Pepper and Morgan, he also designed Friday to look like a little girl in her 10 years old. There is no objection to this Friday. Although she was crooked by Angela, her autonomy is still relatively weak, and she does not have her own preferences in aesthetics. Boss. Mr. Steve replied that the celebration party should be held after returning the infinite gems. If you are free, you can contact Dr. Bruce Banner to recreate a time machine. Friday brought back news that was not so satisfactory to Stark. But this couldn't stop Stark's determination to send Kraft away. Isn't it a time machine? I'll make it for you right away. With Tony Stark's efforts and constantly urging, the celebration party with the theme of defeating Thanos was prepared as quickly as possible. Because the base of the Avengers was destroyed by Thanos, although it has been rebuilt, it will definitely be useless in a short time, so the venue of the celebration party was placed in Wakanda. And T'Challa is also very happy about this. He prepared a sumptuous food and wonderful performances in Wakanda, just to celebrate with his former comrades and express his gratitude to Kraft for his help. But Kraft's feelings for Wakanda were a bit complicated. After all, he had pitted them. Although it was something in other worlds, he still felt a little awkward. Fortunately, they were not familiar with each other, and T'Challa had too many things to do as the organizer, so after a few awkward conversations with Kraft, T'Challa turned to entertain others and let Kraft breathe a sigh of relief. After T'Challa left, Kraft looked around. Angela was running around with little Morgan. There was also a teenage girl beside them. It was the daughter of Aunt Mons Kurt. Although Friday's body was already formed, Stark did not bring her. Came out, but was left at home. The three little girls were joking around in the crowd, and the people nearby also watched them playing there with a smile on their faces. They were a bit nervous when definitely first saw Angela. After all, everyone had seen this little girl beating Thanos and Captain Marvel, but after discovering that she was no different from other little girls except for her superb fighting ability, I gradually relieved my mind. Withdrawing his gaze from Angela and the others, Kraft turned his gaze to the others. Tony Stark can't control his daughter anymore. He simply doesn't see anything. He took Pepper Potts to Captain Steve and chatted about it. After he noticed Kraft's sight, he immediately turned away. When he lost his head, he obviously didn't want to get involved with Kraft. On the other side, the magicians of Kamar Taj and Doctor Strange are surrounding Ancient One, chatting about topics that Kraft thinks are ridiculous, while stretching out their hands to draw magic circles in the air, exchanging some spells on the problem. The other superhero are basically in 2s and 3s with their friends. When they see Kraft, they usually raise a glass to indicate that they don't have the intention of running over to talk to him. Even Nick Fury and those former S.H.I.E.L.D. agents didn't come over to block Kraft. Because Tony Stark warned Nick Fury early that Kraft was in a parallel world, and his relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. was not very good, and after Nick Fury knew that even Captain Marvel had been beaten up, naturally he would not run from boring. Hi. Hello. Your name is Kraft, right? Mr. Stark said you were from a parallel world. Wow. That's incredible. Ah. I didn't doubt what you meant, I mean. That's so cool, isn't it? With so many words, there is no one else besides Peter Parker. Peter Parker is incompatible with most other superhero regardless of age or life experience, and he has very few friendships with each other, so after he greeted Roar with Stark and others, he became a little idle. Then he saw Kraft, who was also doing nothing, looking around. Peter Parker in this world is a bit younger, at the age of 16 or 17, just about the same as Kraft, so he took the initiative to find Kraft's peers. In addition, Peter Parker was originally curious about the parallel world. How is me in the other world? Is he also a superhero? Mr. Stark said that you have a good relationship with me. Can you tell me something? Definitely no problem. Kraft cocked his mouth and began to introduce Peter Parker to Peter Parker. In our world, you are a bit older, and you look different, but I have seen several Spider-Mons of different looks. Probably in many parallel worlds, you are also a relatively special one. As Kraft spoke, he called up the photos of Peter Parker in the original world in the Spider-Man photos he encountered several times later, which naturally contained the Black Spider Myers and the Spider-Gwen. Definitely, Kraft didn't tell Peter Parker that these two people were not his peers. Wow. This is amazing. Hearing Kraft say that he is also a special existence in many parallel worlds, which makes Peter Parker very happy. What is this? Peter Drag Show. When Kraft showed his photos and videos to Peter, Tony Stark still couldn't restrain his curiosity, and approached him, and immediately saw the bulging Spider-Gwen. Good figure, is she your fan? Stark commented casually. It's a pity, it's not. Kraft shrugged and replied for Peter. This is a Spider-Man in other worlds. Anyway, so far, I haven't seen Peter Parker who looks the same. Then these Spider-Man must be very popular in Hollywood. Stark looked at Miles and Gwen and said pointedly. Actually, in my world, Peter is not only a gender cognition disorder, but also gay. When pitting Peter became a habit, Kraft didn't realize until he finished speaking. He said that this had no effect on Peter in another world at all. Isn't it okay no matter how much I spread the rumors? Not only did Kraft not feel guilty, but even more vigorously called out the video of Peter Parker and Harry Osborn turning into ponytail cute girls, and the recording when they shouted, I really want to wear women's clothing. For this reason, I also specially made equipment for him and his good friends to become girls. Kraft turned his head to look at the stunned young Peter. Shall I give you one? No. No need, thank you. My orientation is normal. I am also very satisfied with the male body now. Peter Parker waved his hands again and again. In fact, Tony Stark is very interested in this technology that can change gender, but he glanced at Kraft, who was obviously suffocating the water, and wisely suppressed his curiosity. Then he heard Kraft say quietly, the Peter Parker I knew had a normal orientation before entering university, but later he discovered that Harry Osborn was his true love. You have what kind of same-sex friends play particularly well? No. Peter jumped up like a cat with a stomped tail. No, I have good friends, but our previous relationship is definitely pure friendship. I already have a girl I like. That Peter also had a girlfriend before, but it was a pity that he broke up later. Kraft called up the picture of Mary Jane again. She's Mary Jane, is she the same person you like? Oh no, the girl I like is Liz. When Peter Parker was halfway through the conversation, he suddenly reacted and covered his mouth. But by this time it was too late to cover his mouth. Tony Stark grabbed his shoulder and teased. It looks like our baby spider has grown up. Come and talk to Uncle Tony. You like it. That girl. Faced with the bad uncle's teasing, Peter flushed and shook his head vigorously. The name leads. Kraft called up another photo, which was a close photo of Peter Parker and a fat man. That Peter also has a friend named Liz. What? Peter Parker saw this familiar fat man, opened his mouth in surprise and pointed at him and said, it's Ned, he is my best friend. Then he saw Stark's surprised look and Kraft's meaningfulness. No, no, no. It's not like that. Peter Parker quickly explained. This fat man is called Ned Liz, and is my best friend. The girl I like is Liz Toews. She moved and transferred a long time ago. They are not the same person. Yeah. Clough nodded his head. I know Peter, who fell in love with Harry Osborn after breaking up with Mary Jane. I am not like this. Peter Parker held his head and retorted hoarsely. Tony Stark looked at Peter's face collapsed. Suddenly I understood Kraft's happiness. While Kraft was still in other parallel worlds and couldn't find the coordinates to return, the world he was originally in also ushered in a major crisis. Thanos brought all the troops under his command to the Earth in a mighty manner. Since Thanos doesn't have the equipment to accurately locate gems like Kraft's infinite gems radar, he doesn't actually know that most of the infinite gems are on Earth. He just chased the fleeing Asgard people, to be precise, chasing the space gem in their hands, before placing the target on the Earth. However, Thanos knew the whereabouts of Time Gem very early. Although Ancient One has passed away, out of caution and respect for the Supreme Magician, Thanos pulled all his troops. In any case, there are two of the most troublesome gems of time and space on the Earth. Before, he defeated his cannon fodder Vanguard Chitauri, and his own Obsidian 5 actually lost 3 in this period of time. Individual. So this time Thanos decided not to underestimate any force, and did his best to capture the 2 infinite gems of time and space. Thanos took such a big action with his subordinates, naturally attracted the attention of all forces in the universe, but after realizing that Thanos' goal was not himself, they did not make any more actions to prevent their own forces from being careless. Stimulate this crazy titan. As for the Earth, he is not ignorant of Thanos' actions. With the technical support of Kraft and Inhumans, the Spear Bureau has formed a space fleet and has preliminary contact with a small part of the alien civilization, and things about Thanos will naturally be known. And even if the Spear Bureau didn't notice Thanos' attack, Angela would notify them in time. On the S.H.I.E.L.D. side, there are 2 sources of information, the Struman and Captain Marvel, so they knew the news even earlier than the Spear game. Faced with this kind of global-level crisis, even S.H.I.E.L.D., who regards the maintenance of world peace as their exclusive right, dare not act arbitrarily. Nick Fury and Jung Xian almost passed the information back and forth to the UN Council. Then the United Nations quickly gathered the leaders of all countries in the world and held a meeting in Addis Ababa, Africa. That cosmic butcher named Thanos, why would he stare at our Earth? Just when Jung Xian and Nick Fury introduced the terrible reputation of Thanos on the Interstellar to the countries, the leaders of the courageous countries could not help but scream. According to the information we have collected, Thanos is keen on war. Whenever he attacks the next planet, he will randomly destroy half of the life on that planet. Nick Fury replied solemnly, "But I heard that Thanos came after Asgard?" An official from France folded his hands on his chin, his eyes fixed on Nick Fury. "As long as you hand over those Asgard people, you can let Thanos leave, right? I think your ears may not be very good. Please pay attention to what I just said. Thanos' habit is to eliminate half of life on all planets. It has nothing to do with whether we hand over the Asgard people." Nick Fury insisted on keeping the Asgard people. Naturally, he had his plan, but if the Asgard people were really handed over to avoid the war with Thanos, he would definitely sell Thor's people without hesitation. It is a pity that according to the collected intelligence, since the Earth has been targeted by Thanos, there is no possibility of escape, and the Asgard people are the best force to resist Thanos. Jung Xian, who knows more about Thanos' purpose, also rarely came to the side of S.H.I.E.L.D. According to the information we have received, Thanos' main target is not the Asgard, but the Tesseract that they took away from S.H.I.E.L.D. The official from France's eyes lit up, as that as long as we hand over Tesseract. Some officials with weak national power also showed rejoicing expressions on their faces. Stop daydreaming. Jung Xian buckled his fingers on the table twice and poured cold water on them. The ultimate reason Thanos wants Tesseract is to more easily eliminate half of the life in the universe. Are you planning to gamble on luck with him? Eliminate half of the life in the universe? Is this Thanos a lunatic? It's a pity that Thanos is nicknamed in the universe, Crazy Titans, so yes, he is a lunatic. Nick Fury sneered, extinguishing the last illusions of the officials who still wanted to avoid the war. Moreover, when the Asgard people fled, they didn't have time to bring Tesseract out. Do you think Thanos can't get Tesseract by then? Will you kindly let us go? After understanding that war is unavoidable, the senior officials of various countries packed up and began to discuss the next response plan. At present, the only ones who have gone far in the interstellar area are the Spear Bureau and S.H.I.E.L.D. At this time, they are no longer stingy with their own technology, they have not hidden them, and they have all shared them. Naturally, it also includes Kraft giving them technology. It's not that Jung Xian and the others make their own claims. Before coming, Jung Xian had confirmed to Kraft whether he could disclose those parts that belonged to him, which was authorized by the Master. Definitely, this so-called righteous master is actually Angela, who has taken over all of Kraft's industry. The techniques Kraft handed over to Jung Xian were basically all he collected from the Interstellar. As long as the Earth enters the cosmic age, these techniques will be learned by them sooner or later, so Angela doesn't matter. As for those more unreasonable dreamland technologies, Kraft wanted to teach them, but the key was that others couldn't learn them. In addition to the technology contributed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Spear Bureau, they have also activated those super criminals who have been locked up with superb IQs, such as Vulture Tums, Dr. Octopus, Mr. Fantastic and so on. In short, the Earth unites all the forces that can be united. Before Thanos arrives, it will form an interstellar fleet capable of conducting space warfare at the fastest speed. But even so, only a few countries have ability to form a fleet. The rest of the countries are either insufficient in resources or insufficient in technology and execution. All they can do is help a few big countries and beat the side drums. At the same time, Nick Fury also dispatched Phil Coulson to Oklahoma, where the Asgard people were placed here. When dealing with Thanos, they must definitely have their combat power. It has always been one of the responsibilities of the Asgard people to protect the Earth, and we are naturally obliged to do so. After understanding Phil Coulson's intentions, Thor patted his chest and agreed. Whether they are injustice or selfishness, they must fight against Thanos with the people on Earth. Thor still understands the truth of the death of the lips in the teeth, not to mention the fact that Thanos is almost always rejected. They were introduced to the Earth. The only thing that puzzles Thor is, since you are going to block Thanos' fleet, why don't you go find the kid Kraft? Phil Coulson didn't understand why Thor mentioned Kraft so suddenly. He knows that Thor's attitude towards Kraft is not that good with the efforts of his parents. Could it be that Thor was playing them in the first place? Actually, the relationship between the two is pretty good? Although he was suspicious of Thor, Phil Coulson did not show it. After all, the Earth has now come to life and death. The calculations made by S.H.I.E.L.D. at the beginning are now a mere trivial matter and are no longer important. In fact, we have already obtained Kraft's technical support from the Spear game, but we are still too far behind to deal with Thanos, so Asgard's power is indispensable. Are you serious? Hearing Phil Coulson's words, Thor looked at him in surprise and asked. Phil Coulson. Phil Coulson, who didn't understand Thor's surprise at all, stared at him for a moment, then gradually recollected. There are obvious differences in their perceptions of Kraft. Do you think Kraft can be the main force to stop Thanos' invasion? Can you tell me the reason? As an old fritters who has been in the agent industry for many years, Phil Coulson immediately began to collect information from Thor according to his professional habits. And Thor, Tihanhan, is a silly guy. He didn't talk to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the Avengers about Kraft before. First, they just arrived on Earth and were busy resettling the people. Second, Thor felt like that. It's a shame that I don't want to take the initiative to mention Kraft. So Thor simply talked to S.H.I.E.L.D. about Ragnarok's predictions. The specific situation was not discussed in detail. S.H.I.E.L.D. sensed Thor's thoughts and thought it was because his father's death did not want to talk about this topic, so he also did not ask in detail. This led to the incident of Kraft being so accidentally ignored. But now that Phil Coulson asked, Thor naturally had something to say, telling him what had happened before in Asgard. Then Phil Coulson thought he might be listening to fairy tales. No, in some ways, what happened in Asgard is a myth. Are you sure you didn't drink much? Phil Coulson couldn't believe what Thor said. The technology in Kraft's hands is very powerful, yes. But the black battleship in Thor's mouth is too outrageous. Wasn't Kraft the only battleship that looked like a medieval sailing ship? How did it become the battlestar described by Thor in such a short time? I didn't lie. When Kraft summoned the battleship, I was not the only one who saw it. Thor can understand Phil Coulson's surprise. After all, when he saw the giant black battleship, he didn't recover for a long time. Sorry, I'm not suspicious of you, it's incredible. I need to report to Chief Fury first, and then I'll leave. After absent-mindedly apologizing to Thor, Phil Coulson hurriedly left Asgard's settlement on Earth. On the way back, Phil Coulson reported the information obtained from Thor to Nick Fury. I see. After listening to Phil Coulson's report, Nick Fury simply replied, and then ended the call. It was not that he was strong and calm, but that the news was too shocking and made Nick Fury's reaction a little slow. Fortunately, Nick Fury also experienced strong winds and waves. He quickly adjusted and contacted Jung Xian, the director of the Spear Bureau. At the same time, he also sent a message to the Stru people and asked about the Cross Pioneer. News from the spaceship. It wasn't that they had forgotten the spacecraft that Kraft used to leave the Earth, but they in the Spear Bureau believed that Kraft would probably not be able to splash water in the vast interstellar space with just one spacecraft, so I didn't care about this information. But judging from the intelligence obtained by Thor, Kraft seems to be mixing well in the universe? During the video call with Jung Xian, Nick Fury confirmed that the Spear Bureau is also ignorant of Kraft's situation in the universe, so after a brief chat, the two super-organized bosses are just like that. He stared wide and small across the screen, waiting for the follow-up information to arrive. Then they received various reports about the Pirates of the Universe, the Red Queen, and the Vanguard of Death. After reading these materials, Jung Xian and Nick Fury became more silent. Although it is already known that Kraft probably did something in the universe, but it is too big, hey. But compared to Nick Fury, who is full of flavors at the moment, Zheng Xian's mood is much lighter. Their relationship between the spear game and craft has always been pretty good, even if it has a headache, it is also Nick Fury's business. Leave it to me about contacting craft. Presumably Director Fury has no opinion? Zheng Xian raised the corners of his mouth, folded his fingers, leaned back, leaned on the chair in a very comfortable position, and raised Erlang's legs. Looking at the triumphant look of Zheng Xian on the screen, Nick Fury gritted his teeth with hatred. He never thought that Kraft could hide so deeply. If he knew this was the case, S.H.I.E.L.D. would have treated Kraft as his grandfather, confessed. However, it is too late to regret it now. What Nick Fury should consider now is how to repair the relationship with Kraft after defeating Thanos. Then trouble Director Zheng. Although regretful in his heart, Nick Fury is calm on the surface and still looks calm. Until the screen in front of him went dark, Nick Fury couldn't help but smash the desktop fiercely. Mom messing with FAK. Damn Hydra. On the other hand, after Zheng Xian finished the video call with Nick Fury, he immediately called Kraft, and the moment the call was connected, Zheng Xian used the most amiable tone of his life to tell Kraft. Swift called on roar. Xiao Yi, I am your Uncle Zheng. Oh, hello, Uncle Zheng. The response on the other end of the phone was dull, but Zheng Xian didn't care, and still used that amiable tone to play with Krafta. After talking about it for a while, Zheng Xian turned the topic to Thanos. Xiao Yi, you have said it yourself, Thanos' purpose is to eliminate half of the lives in the universe. Since you have such a powerful force as Death Vanguard, how can you hide yourself in this crisis? You should stand up for the Earth. What a great effort. Zheng Xian guessed that Kraft was overshadowed by America's idiots, so he refused to reveal his full strength. Although they are also worried about the skills in Kraft's hands, this kind of thing has to happen slowly. How can it be so ugly like S.H.I.E.L.D.? Those foreigners are really short-sighted. Contemptuously despised Nick Fury in his heart, Zheng Xian gave Kraft a ticket. Uncle Zheng assures you that there will never be any foolish fools who will trouble you afterwards. That, after being silent for a while, the voice suddenly changed to that of a cute girl. Without my brother's consent, I don't know if I should participate in this battle. Angela. Zheng Xian definitely knows about Kraft's 3 artificial intelligence sisters. After all, the documents they registered are all from the side of the Spear Bureau. It's me. The person who just talked to you has always been me, and the last authorization for space technology was also in disguise. Angela explained her identity simply. What about Kraft? My brother got Tesseract from Asgard, and then made an instrument that can traverse parallel worlds. He ran to other worlds to play, and I couldn't contact him. Flat. Parallel world. The corners of Zheng Xian's mouth on the other end of the phone twitched frantically, and Kraft's invention became more and more outrageous. Although Kraft is not here now, if he is there, he will definitely take action to protect the Earth. Don't forget that there are still his relatives and friends on the Earth. But now is not the time to investigate these things. Zheng Xian hastened to find ways to persuade Angela. It's okay. My brother has a planet in outer space. I can transfer Aunt May and them all over there. There is actually another planet. Zheng Xian only felt a mouthful of old blood stuck in his throat. Yes, but without my brother's consent, I can't take you all over. Angela replied solemnly. No, I didn't mean that. Director Zheng Xian organized the language and continued to persuade. If we can, we are not going to give up our home planet. Since Kraft can't be reached now, you can try from a human perspective, make your own decision. But, according to the Artificial Intelligence Registration Act, if I do this, won't I be put into the ranks of dangerous brains and be closely monitored? Angela finally revealed her true purpose. She wanted to take this opportunity to fight for the rights of relative freedom for the 3 sisters without causing trouble to Kraft. I didn't expect that one day I would actually be able to leave the Earth and come to space to fight. In the spacecraft built by S.H.I.E.L.D., Steve Rogers couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the pitch-black space outside. As an old antique 70 years ago, Steve lived in an era when humans had not even entered space, and their knowledge of the entire universe was very thin. And now, he was able to leave the Earth in a spacecraft and arrive near Saturn tens of millions of kilometers away. So even if the Earth is facing a crisis, Steve still feels moved. If you really like the universe so much, when we defeat Thanos, I can build a spaceship for you so that you can play in the universe slowly. Worried about the next battle in his heart, Tony Stark joked with Steve half-truths to ease his tension. Good intentions. Steve smiled and waved his hand. I don't even understand the smartphone yet. You give me a spaceship and I can't use it. Don't worry, I will design the spacecraft's operating system to a level that even monkeys can understand. Then you remember to match me with a monkey driver then. Steve also understood that Stark was using his own way to decompress, and he joked with him. In fact, it is not just the two of them, the other superhero are also similar, they are all chatting without words to relieve the inner tension. Time passed quickly in the lack of nutrition of the superhero's conversation, until the reconnaissance plane in front discovered Thanos' fleet. The enemy has appeared, and all units are in a state of preparation. Repeat, the enemy has appeared, and all units are in a state of preparation. Alarms sounded in all the spaceships, and the superhero checked their equipment for the last time, waiting for Thanos to arrive. After a while, a very oppressive giant battleship appeared in the eyes of everyone. Behind this giant battleship, 3 relatively small battleships followed, the Kun-type spacecraft used by Chitauri before invading the Earth. Compared with these 4 warships, it looks like a small fry. This head is too exaggerated. Looking at the data fed back by the radar, Stark couldn't help but be speechless. Can our spacecraft really cause effective damage to them? However, no matter how guilty Stark is, their battle with Thanos is inevitable. When Thanos' fleet entered the encirclement of the Earth Alliance, all the warships removed the invisible force field at the same time, pouring various ammunition on the 4 warships. In order to be able to resolve the Thanos crisis exactly, all countries have taken out the nuclear bombs they have been holding. The number is really much more than what they have disclosed. However, even if all the nuclear bombs on the Earth were thrown out, they still failed to knock down Thanos' battleship. It's not that nuclear bombs can cause damage, but Thanos sent out all the troops loaded in the battleship as soon as he discovered that he was ambushed. Most of the attacks of the Earth-allied forces were blocked by these cannon fodder. Only a very small part of it attacked Thanos' main ship. Although it broke a little armor, it was nothing compared to its huge amounts of body size, and it did not produce any substantial results. After the failed raid, the warships of the Earth Alliance did not choose to continue fighting with Thanos' army, but quickly began to withdraw. There is no other way. Although the various forces on the Earth have spent a lot of black technology during this period, the time to form the space fleet is still too short, and it is difficult to support it only with the resources on the Earth. They fought a large-scale interstellar war. So in the end, they still put hope on the superhero. As the Earth's fleet began to retreat, an orange portal appeared in front of all the superhero and supervillains participating in the war. According to their negotiated plan, after the raid fails, Kamar Taj's magician will open the portal to the interior of the Thanos battleship to perform beheading operations. Stark and others stepped into the portal one after another, but since the magicians of Kamar Taj had never entered Thanos' battleship, they appeared in different positions, and they could only fight with the aliens in the spacecraft, while looking for signs of Thanos. Captain Marvel, who had been waiting for a long time, rammed into Thanos' main ship and wanted to use this method to force Thanos out. Although Thanos' main ship was invaded, his fleet did not respond to assistance, but continued to pursue those fleets that were evacuating. However, Jung Xian of the Spear Bureau said that he had a way, plus the security of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury, so the others didn't have the means to prepare for the break. Director Jung Xian, didn't you say that there is a way to stop Thanos' fleet? On a spaceship 100,000 kilometers away from the battlefield of Saturn, the military leaders of various countries, Nick Fury, and the 2 directors Jung Xian formed a circle. Between them, everything on the battlefield of Saturn was projected. Seeing that the fleet of the Earth-allied forces was about to be overtaken, those high-level military officials who had invested a lot of military expenditure on the fleet could not sit still and hurriedly urged. Don't worry, reinforcements are here. Jung Xian crossed his hands under his nose and said quietly. At the same time, a behemoth appeared on the projection in the middle of the meeting. It is a battleship that is not inferior to the Thanos main ship in size, and even has some even more huge amounts of. The overall shape of the battleship is a cone, which looks like an arrow, and some of the knights' guns used in the Western Middle Ages. This. What is this? Except for the 2 directors and the senior officials of the 2 countries who have been vaccinated, the senior officials of other countries couldn't help but scream. The appearance of the Shadow Spear is really beyond their imagination. Their original guess is that the Spear Bureau is either hiding some powerful superpowers with ability, or there is a secret fleet. But this one is too much. Is this the reason why they are called Spear Game? For a time, many people who did not pass the world history had such a misunderstanding. Jung Xian didn't explain much, so let them continue to misunderstand him. At the same time, his head drooped slightly to cover up the shock in his eyes. Nick Fury on the other side was in a similar situation. Although it has long been known that Kraft has such an exaggerated battleship in his hands, the 2 directors still feel unbelievable when they actually see its appearance. No matter what they wanted to break their heads, they couldn't think of how Kraft could make such an exaggerated thing like the Shadow Spear on his own in less than a year. High-level leaders in various countries were still in shock and could not relax, and the Spear of Shadow had new changes. The densely packed spaceships and giant robots flew out from various places of the shadow sphere, and there were countless figures leaping around it. At a glance, the number of these spaceships is actually quite a lot, at least 1/6 or 1/7 of the Thanos fleet. There is actually such an exaggerated fleet? Nick Fury widened his eyes and looked aside Zhang Xian. I have never heard of this kind of thing. I do not know either. Zhang Xian returned Nick Fury's eyes with a dazed expression. He even knew about the Shadow Spear from Nick Fury, and he was even more unlikely to know about the fleet. It's normal to have a huge amount of warships like the Shadow Spear, equipped with a large fleet, just like the main ship of Thanos' Holy Place and the other 3 frigates, all carrying a lot of troops. But how long has craft been ingenious? It's incredible to be able to make a Shadow Spear, and there is actually a fleet that matches it? In the Holy Place battleship, Thanos couldn't help snorting coldly when he looked at the familiar fluorescent green particles. Just right, it saves me the effort of searching. When the Shadow Spear appeared on the battlefield, the superhero who had entered the Holy Place battleship knew nothing about it. At the moment they were exhausted under the chase and interception of the internal guards of the battleship, but they did not have the time to pay attention to the situation on the external battlefield. Dispatch superhero into Thanos' main ship for decapitation. This idea is indeed very good, but the prerequisite for the success of the plan is that the superhero's combat power can crush aliens except Thanos. Outstanding physical fitness, advanced technology and equipment, and peculiar mutation ability. These things make superhero and supervillains stand out among all the people on Earth. But after putting them in the entire universe, most of the so-called ability of superhero became ordinary. The alien technology that Thanos mastered is not much weaker than the technology of most equipment in superhero. Only a few unreasonable black technologies such as Iron Man can be better than them. The equipment of the rest of them, in fact, it is similar to the standard equipment of Thanos' elite troops. And those with super ability have no obvious advantages compared with the strange cosmic races. The worst thing is that like Captain Steve, there are only types with excellent physical fitness. In the vast universe, there are many races whose physical fitness far exceeds that of people on Earth. The upper levels of the Earth were mainly deceived by Chitauri, who invaded New York. They thought that even if the physical fitness of the aliens was strong, they were only limited in their strengths, so they came up with a plan for decapitation. After receiving the messages from the superhero, the seniors on the command ship did not look very good. If it weren't for the Spear of Shadow to support them, maybe they all started to think about Noah at this time. The arc was planned. But even so, this group of high-level officials showed a more or less panic expression, and only the 2 directors Nick Fury and Zhang Xian could remain calm. Nick Fury's confidence is naturally the last hope, Captain Marvel Carol Danvers. Zhang Xian can be so calm because he has seen the power of a Rayleigh before. At the moment, on the outer battlefield, the battleship of the Earth Allied forces, under the escort of Shadow Spear, finally managed to escape from the pursuit of Thanos' army. After all the warships left, a light blue energy shield was illuminated on the outside of the Shadow Spear, and then all the jets on the Shadow Spear were opened, pushing it to the Holy Place mothership of Thanos. Before Thanos' fleet even had time to react, the tip of the Shadow Spear stabbed into the Holy Place mothership. As for the superhero who performed the decapitation, Angela had naturally confirmed that she did not exist at the location of the impact before the impact. While the Shadow Spear hit the Holy Place mothership, Angela also sent a reminder to all superheroes. Prepare for shock resistance. I'm going to hit it. When Angela's voice rang in the headset, most of the superhero were dumbfounded. Only Peter Parker and a few people familiar with Angela could distinguish her voice. However, before they could react, they felt a violent vibration from the spaceship under their feet. The unsuspecting people and Thanos' troops in the battleship all flew up due to the impact and fell heavily. Even Thanos, who was playing inextricably with Captain Marvel. Even under Angela's calculation, the tip of the Shadow Spear hit the battlefield between Captain Marvel and Thanos. Ha! Perfect. 2 small figures leapt down from the tip of the Shadow Spear and landed in front of Carol, who was uncertain. Ha 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 ha. It's Moxigan. As soon as Rayleigh saw Captain Marvel's peculiar shape, he pointed to her nose and laughed. Okay, Rayleigh, let's do our business first. Angela patted Alayle's head and reminded. Oh. Rayleigh responded with a small fist high, and then looked around. Where is the bad guy? Not only did the 2 little guys' attitudes like no one else irritate Thanos, but even Captain Marvel became a little dissatisfied. But after all, the other party is 2 children. Captain Marvel still admonished in a deep voice. This place is very dangerous, you leave quickly. Maybe you both have extraordinary powers, but the battle here is not something children like you can participate in. However, it was Rayleigh's laughter that answered Carol. Ha 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 ha, Sister Angela, this person is so funny. I said. This is not where you guys are joking. Seeing that the two girls didn't listen to people at all, Captain Marvel shouted. It's a pity that Aureli's attention has long been on her body. Purple alien. Aureli, who has seen many types of aliens, finally discovered a new skin color. She took out a small camera from her trouser pocket, happily ran to Thanos's, and snapped a photo. After taking a few photos of Thanos with a daunting look, Aureli turned around and waved to Angela. Sister Angela, come and help me, I want to take a picture with this purple uncle. After being completely ignored, Thanos finally came back to his senses, grabbing the sword and slashing on Aureli's head. As for the other party is just a little girl. For Thanos, there is no difference between men and women, old and young, and there are too many children who died in his hands. What's more, Thanos remembered an unconfirmed rumor that the captain of Death Pioneer was actually a teenage girl. Before, Thanos thought it was the babbling of some drunkard, but now it seems to be true. Careful. Although he didn't like these two rude little girls very much, Captain Marvel reacted in time, and a dazzling flame suddenly ignited on his body and slammed into Thanos, knocking him out. Ouch. Aureli looked at Thanos and Captain Marvel who were fighting again, and tilted his head. A wrestling game. Add me. 3 steps and 2 steps rushed in front of Thanos and Carol. Aureli stretched out his hands and slapped them both. Thanos and Carol only felt that an unstoppable force was acting on their bodies, followed by a whirl of the sky in front of them, and the sound of the whistling wind roar and the sound of a series of body crashing against the wall came from their ears. When the two of them came back to their senses and found that they were already in space, the Holy Place mothership was left far behind. From their position, the huge amounts of warship even had only fist's file size. Who am I? Where am I? What happened? Carol Danvers asked the soul 3 times. Just now, I seem to be slapped flying by the little girl with purple hair. After finally calming down, Carol finally recalled his previous experience, but what just happened was too unbelievable, and Captain Marvel couldn't accept this fact for a while. However, before Captain Marvel could digest what had just happened, she saw the little girl who patted her and Thanos flying over from the direction of the Holy Place mothership with a smile on her face, and then slammed her head on Thanos. This time, as a bystander, Carol finally confirmed what happened just now. Thanos, who was hit by Aureli, turned into a meteor again, and flew into the distance at a speed faster than Carol's full flight. A green light door opened in Kraft's laboratory, and Kraft and Ancient One, which had disappeared for a long time, walked out of it. Are we back? Looking at the familiar sight in front of him, Kraft turned his head to look at Ancient One, and at the same time knocked on the nano earphone behind his ear. Ancient One closed his eyes and felt it, then smiled and nodded, and Angela's voice came from the headset. Yes, brother, you are welcome back. Roar. After the 2-factor authentication, Kraft breathed a sigh of relief, then walked out of the laboratory and asked Angela, during my absence, nothing major happened, right? Should it be right? Angela replied uncertainly. It's that Director Zheng Xian of the Spear Bureau came to my brother and wanted to teach others the skills you gave them. I thought it wasn't something important, so I promised for you. Ends. Well, it's a small matter. Kraft didn't think that those techniques were important. In fact, when he gave those techniques to the Spear Bureau, he was already at their disposal. Unexpectedly, the Divine Spear Bureau would take the initiative to ask, and sure enough, these compatriots are more reliable than the Shield. Any other things? The other thing is that the Spear Bureau is looking for your brother to help beat the bad guys, and then I will go to help with Aureli. The spear game is not good, you and Allah are still needed to fight a bad guy. Huh? What are you talking about? Because Angela's tone was too relaxed, Kraft didn't distinguish it carefully, and only halfway through casual teasing did he discover that it was wrong. What kind of villain needs Aureli to appear on the stage? It's the Thanos that you have been talking about. He suddenly led an army to invade the Earth. Director Zheng Xian didn't know where to find out about the Death Vanguard, so he came to you for help. I think you value Thanos so much. It was dispatched with Aureli in the Spear of Shadow. There was a little regret in Angela's tone, as a result, that Thanos is not too strong. It was defeated after being beaten by Aureli for a few times. After a pause, Angela still commented impartially. However, after being able to endure Aureli several times, that Thanos is worthy of recognition in terms of defensive power. It feels much better than the one I defeated in the parallel world. But that's it. No, there are not many guys in this world who can take a few punches of Aureli. Kraft covered his forehead speechlessly, feeling that Angela seemed to have some cognitive problems. As for the Death Vanguard, when the outer space technology was handed over to the Spear Bureau, Kraft knew that one day it would be exposed, so he didn't intend to cover it up. Otherwise, when he was in Asgard, he wouldn't have summoned the Spear of Shadow with such carelessness. So, basically those high-level leaders now know the existence of you and the Shadow Spear? Well, and I took the opportunity to get a special license for the three of us from the United Nations. Angela triumphantly invited Kraft's special credit. Me, Sister Alice, and Aurelie are the only three of which are officially recognized as free artificial intelligence and are not subject to the Artificial Intelligence Registration Act constraint. I didn't use that thing to restrain you. Kraft recalled that he seemed to have restricted Angela at the beginning, and then he didn't guard against her anymore, and Alice was the one he felt most relieved. As for Aurelie, she is also very good. After confirming that he had not done anything wrong with them, Kraft expressed doubts about Angela's operation. But then we have to be sneaky. I don't care. Aurelie can only stay in virtual games most of the time, which is too pitiful. And Sister Alice, always scrupulous about the identity of her robot. It can only be said that these three robot sisters of Kraft are really sisters. Alice always silently takes care of the naughty Angela and Aurelie. Angela is also broken for Aurelie and Alice, and Aurelie is also obedient to these two sisters. Alright, you guys are happy. In fact, Kraft has also considered the issue of Aurelie. He collected space gems to make the portal gun of Mr. Rick. Part of the reason was that he wanted to take Aurelie to play in other parallel worlds. Anyway, as long as there is no end of the world at that time, you can let Aurelie have a good time, and then wait for the people of that world to run away with Aurelie. Then Aurelie didn't cause any trouble, right? In fact, it's not impossible to let Aurelie's play out of temperament, but there will definitely be a group of people protesting, which is also a characteristic of Western countries. Even the superhero who protects them will be attacked from time to time, let alone an intelligent robot like Aurelie, so Kraft prevents Aurelie from going out at will, in fact, is protecting her from being abused and attacked. Although Aurelie himself probably wouldn't care about it, Angela definitely couldn't help it, and Kraft himself couldn't say that it would be a lot of trouble if the time came. So it's better to parallel the world, just run away after patting butt. Brother, you have no confidence in Aurelie. Aurelie is still very good, as long as you tell her well, it's okay to go out for activities. Probably because she felt that her words did not seem to be credible, Angela added. And from time to time, the official will send those superheroes to accompany Aurelie, and also set up an island for her activities. But a while ago, the island was Aurelie accidentally punched it and it is now a small island. Well, it just broke an island, small things, at least the earth is not bad. Kraft sighed silently. Aurelie is now in a big row, and the official has specially designated a venue for her to play, but she also finds someone to accompany her to play. It's also hard for those superheroes to play with Alale, which is a big test for the heart. The only thing that can be thankful is that there is no life-threatening. Kraft, who was thinking of contacting Peter, Harry, Uncle Tony and other acquaintances in a few days, instantly changed his mind. Because of my stay in America, the heavy duty of playing with Aurelie is mostly on the heads of the Avengers, and compared to other superheroes, it is definitely safer to start with an acquaintance like Peter Parker. So you must contact them immediately and listen to their tragic experience. The gloating Kraft first dialed Peter Parker's phone and answered in seconds. Kraft, you are finally back. Peter Parker's excited voice came on the other end of the phone. Do you know how miserable I have been during this period of time? Without waiting for Kraft to ask questions, Peter Parker, who was already talking about him, crackled and told Kraft about his playing with Aurelie. Things are even more extreme than Kraft imagined. Uncle Tony and Harry Osborn are members of the big capitalists, and the government can't force assignments at all. So the initial work with Aurelie was basically done by Peter Parker. Unlucky kid to complete it. Definitely, Peter will not really be the only one involved, but everyone else is a temporary worker, and part-time worker, and only Peter is a long-term accompanying person. Peter was also the only witness and participant in the incident of Aurelie's island turning into an archipelago. The situation at that time was that Aurelie was a little excited and threw a punch at Peter Parker. Then Peter took the initiative to avoid Aurelie's fist because of spider telepathy, which caused Aurelie to lose strength and directly a punch hit the island. When he saw that the island under his feet was beginning to fall apart, Peter was so scared that he almost peed. He thought that because of his subconscious dodge, Aurelie punched the earth to pieces. However, thanks to this incident, the official found that Spider-Man was not suitable for Aurelie's accompaniment, and they were replaced by Captain Steve Rogers, who has special defensive abilities. Tony Stark and T'Challa also specially built many vibranium bunkers on the islands, and also provided the captain with a large number of vibranium shields for consumption. Is this an exaggeration? After listening to Peter's account, Kraft felt that they were making a fuss a little bit. As long as you find the right way, Aurelie is actually pretty good. Peter Parker. Haha. Kraft's initial plan was to record the coordinates after returning, and immediately take Aurelie to other parallel worlds, think of a way to get a time gem to collect 6, and find himself in other parallel worlds by the way. But what he didn't expect was that Angela actually took advantage of Thanos' invasion. Kraft was curious, so he chose to stay for a while to observe the follow-up development. What Kraft didn't expect was that O'Reilly actually blended into the daily life of ordinary people. I don't know if it was Alice and the others who were well educated, or the secret efforts of those superheroes had the effect. Anyway, even if O'Reilly went out alone now, nothing special would happen. Although O'Reilly would occasionally pull his head on the street, it only scared some Chinatown neighborhoods at first. After knowing that she was a robot made by Kraft, many people came to Chinatown specially. Watch O'Reilly pick his head to play. Even because of O'Reilly's cute appearance and optimistic attitude, coupled with the accumulated popularity when she was an NPC in Dreamland, someone specially formed her support club. According to Alice, she also met a player in the game and ran to ask O'Reilly if he could throw him out like in the game. If Alice hadn't stopped him in time, that guy would probably have to lie down in the hospital for a long time. A period of time. What makes Kraft speechless is that there are more than one game fans who come to die like this. In fact, Kraft also knew that most of them were confused by O'Reilly's appearance, and just wanted to tease her, but still couldn't help but admire these guys. On the official side, in addition to letting those superhero play with O'Reilly from time to time, that is, when Alice and O'Reilly go out, they will send someone to stare in the dark. This Kraft can understand. After all, even nuclear weapons have to be closely watched. Existences like O'Reilly's that can break stars with bare hands, if you don't stare at them, you can't rest assured, as long as they don't disturb Alice and O'Reilly's daily routines. Activities, Kraft also went with them. In fact, American officials are also very troubled by the existence of Kraft and O'Reilly. It will definitely be useless to impose black hands or even detain Kraft facelessly like before. Let's not say that the Spear Bureau will definitely intervene. They can't do Kraft either. After discussing for more than 10 days, and found that there is no way to deal with Kraft, this special guy, at present, America officials simply chose to keep their eyes out of sight and turned their heads to expand the space business. As a matter of course, SHIELD, as a special organization of America in the United Nations, also followed the will of the Big Brother and stopped all previous plans for Kraft. In addition to being an escort and daily surveillance with peace of mind, it also shifted the focus of work in outer space. Who knows if the Earth will be smashed with a punch by O'Reilly? It is serious to develop an alien colony earlier. Anyway, they are very familiar with this business. However, what Kraft didn't expect was that although Nick Fury didn't intend to cause trouble, others were eyeing him. Or rather, eyeing his robot sisters. This person was Mephisto, who was attacked by Ancient One and banished back to Hell. After seeing Herbie's special soul, Mephisto became very interested in that special soul. As a demon who is good at manipulating souls, Mephisto is full of the desire to explore this kind of soul that can be manufactured artificially. Unfortunately, when he was tempting Herbie, the Ancient One who was cheated to death gave him a hand, causing the only one to be killed by him. The soul of the perceived artificial intelligence is thus annihilated. Later, he tried many times to sneak into the world from Hell again, but was chased and intercepted by Ancient One. Later, another guy named Dr. Strange joined him. Looking at the spells he used, he was obviously the heir of the nasty guy Ancient One. However, as an old demon who has lived for tens of thousands of years, Mephisto will naturally not give up his plan because of this trivial matter. He has plenty of experience in fighting Kamar Taj Magician. Compared with demons, humans have too many flaws. Mephisto only needs to wait until they are a little loose before they can secretly send projection duplication into the world again, and then naturally he can slowly plan the soul of artificial intelligence he needs. Then Mephisto quickly waited for the opportunity. Ancient One followed Kraft to parallel time and space. In order to fight Thanos, Dr. Strange also took most of Kamar Taj's magicians to space. Only the few magicians who stayed behind the Earth and the three holy places did not perceive Mephisto's infiltration. After Mephisto came to Earth again, he discovered that Reed Richards, who made Herbie, went to Saturn with him, and Stark and others, also known as genius scientists, were not on Earth. He also failed to find a soul with a data stream like Herbie. Angela was actually still on Earth at the time, but she was used to staying in the data world, and with the soul gem in her body, Mephisto's detection magic could not find her. When Thanos was beaten by O'Reilly into severe hemiplegia, and the superhero and scientists returned to Earth, Mephisto secretly observed them. Although these people have more or less made their own artificial intelligence, Mephisto has not found any soul-generating ones. Originally, Mephisto intended to use magic to influence Reed Richards, and let him recreate an artificial intelligence in the same way as Herbie. But because of the previous incident in Herbie, Reed was thrown into the raft prison after returning to Earth, and he was not allowed to touch any electronic products. This led to the fact that even if Mephisto used magic to influence Reed, the conditions in the raft prison did not allow Mr. Fantastic to be another Herbie. If Mephisto spends some thought, it is not without a solution, secretly rescued Reed, transported the equipment in without being discovered, found out the production method from Reed to find someone, or simply did it by himself. These methods are not difficult for Mephisto. Originally, Mephisto was also planning to get Reed out quietly and use the magic technique to leave a stand-in in the prison. But I don't know if it was lucky or unfortunate. Mephisto overheard the news of Aurelie. He took a look at it curiously and was pleasantly surprised to find that the two robots, Alice and Aurelie, had souls almost the same as humans. Although not the kind of strange data stream soul, Mephisto was not disappointed, because what he wanted to study was all artificial souls, and the appearance of the soul was not important to him. Aurelie's exaggerated power, Mephisto, definitely saw it, but he didn't worry too much. When Aurelie's soul was out of his body, wouldn't it be enough to let him squash it? So when Alice took Aurelie out again for a stroll, Mephisto turned into a middle-aged gentleman in a tuxedo, top hat and a cane, and found them both. Two little girls, are you interested in coming to see the latest circus performance of our circus? Mephisto took off his top hat and conjured a bouquet of flowers from it, then took out a circus promotional card from the flowers and handed it to Alice and Aurelie. Wow, it's a magician. Alice took the card in Mephisto's hand, read the content carefully, and then looked at Aurelie next to him. How about we go to the circus show? Oh. I want to go. I want to go. This kind of good thing Aurelie definitely will not refuse. She happily raised her fists and shouted. Then trouble Mr. Magician for you to lead the way. Please follow me. Mephisto was polite and took Alice and Angela to a park nearby. Our circus is now stationed in the front park and will be there soon. The two simple robots followed without any doubt. Led by Mephisto, Alice and Aurelie walked into the park. This is a very ordinary park with a small area, but it is well planned. There is an artificially excavated lake in it, surrounded by a very wide grassland. The nearby residents usually choose the location here for outdoor gatherings and other activities. Martin Lee also brought Kraft and Alice here, as well as Peter Parker's family, and some people in the homeless shelter. After Aurelie was able to move freely, Alice led her to experience the places she had visited before and the activities she had participated in, and they had just been here just a while ago. Passing through a tree-lined path, the three came to the artificial lake. The empty grassland has now been occupied by large and small colored tents. A group of children laughed and crawled between the tents, and Joker was selling snacks, drinks and balloons and other gadgets. When we came 2 days ago, it was still empty here. Alice stretched out her hand to cover her mouth, and whispered, when did so many things move in? I didn't notice it at all. She thought the so-called circus performances were just small circuses, because the traditional means of temporarily attracting customers like this had long been abandoned by those large circuses. Generally speaking, this kind of large-scale circus performance will be advertised in advance and then pre-sold tickets, and the location will not be in such an ordinary or even not very eye-catching place, otherwise it will not be able to pay back at all. But Alice didn't understand the twists and turns in it. She just thought it was strange to see a circus performance by a large circus suddenly here. As for Aurelie, not to mention, she had joined the group of children with a big laugh and had a great time. You can walk around here now. Our performance still has 13 minutes and 46 seconds to officially start. Mephisto, who was doing the whole show, raised his wrist, looked at his watch and said to Alice, then took off and bowed again politely. I'll be temporarily separated. Alice replied politely, and then ran to Aurelie with small steps. Aurelie, you can't run around. Elder sister will take you to buy something to eat first, okay? Great. The two held hands and wandered around the area where the circus was stationed. Although the official performance has not yet begun, there are still relatively simple performances like tossing the ball and stepping on a wheelbarrow, so Alice and Aurelie did not feel bored while they were waiting. Instead, they looked forward to the next official performance. After more than 10 minutes, salutes sounded everywhere, and with countless flying balloons and falling ribbons, the performance officially began. Alice and Aurelie followed the flow of people into the largest tent in the middle, then found a very good viewing position and sat down. Speaking of it, we don't seem to have bought tickets. When the two of them sat down, Alice tilted her head in doubt, but soon she left the matter behind, because the following performance had already begun. Good looking forward. Good looking forward. Aurelie sat next to Alice, clenched both hands, and stared excitedly at the animal trainer and a group of large and small animals. As the opening show, the appearance of a large number of animals instantly made the children present joyous roar, and Alice and Aurelie are naturally no exception. As the performance progressed, the trainer in the venue suddenly initiated an invitation, wanting to choose 2 people to cooperate with him in the performance. I want to participate. I want to participate. Aurelie stood on the chair definitely, straightened his arms and shouted. Okay, then I will invite the 2 little sisters over there. The trainer stretched out his hand to the position of Aurelie, and the assistant beside him walked quickly in front of the two of them. "Excuse me, are you sure you want to accept my invitation? You will stay with some terrible things next." The assistant confirmed again. If it were a normal human being, it would naturally be more or less worried, but Alice and Aurelie are both robots, so naturally they are not afraid of lions or tigers. Seeing both Alice and Aurelie nodded without hesitation, Mephisto, who turned into an assistant, showed a weird smile. "So, the contract is established." After speaking, he stretched out his hand to grab the arms of both, and then fell back straight like this. At the same time, the crowds around roar, the trainers and animals on the field, and the huge amounts of tents all turned into a puff of blue smoke and disappeared, but a black vortex of huge amounts of appeared on the ground, which from time to time spit out a crimson fire. Alice and Aurelie only felt that their feet were empty, being dragged by the assistant of the animal trainer whose image had changed dramatically in front of them, and fell into the black whirlpool together. Brother, sister Alice and Aurelie have an accident. Kraft, who was sorting out his messy inventory and preparing for the next parallel world trip, suddenly heard Angela's anxious roar cry in his ear. Kraft froze for a moment, and subconsciously pulled out his ears, suspecting that he might have heard it wrong. "What did you just say? An accident happened to Aurelie. On Earth, who else can cause Aurelie to have an accident? Wait, could it be Aurelie who caused something? Such as breaking the Earth. But I didn't feel the earthquake or anything. If only some buildings were destroyed, Angela shouldn't be so anxious." Various speculations flashed through Kraft's heart, but he quickly denied them all. "Someone has shot their souls, it's probably the Mephisto you mentioned before." Soon, Angela gave the answer. Kraft knew that she had marked her and Alice's souls, and immediately understood what was going on. What? How are they doing now? Now Kraft was also anxious, he was weak in this regard. The Mephisto incident, that is, Ancient One casually mentioned, Kraft completely forgot about it after giving the soul gem to Angela for self-defense, let alone any complete response plan. "Angela, first try to see if you can turn them back together." Both Alice and Aurelie are equipped with a folding device that can go home quickly. In addition to themselves, Angela can also forcibly activate this device. Although their souls were dragged into hell by Mephisto, their mechanical bodies were still able to function normally, so soon, the motionless bodies of Alice and Aurelie appeared in front of Kraft. "Their souls are gone," Angela said to Kraft with a weeping voice. "I rushed over as soon as the marker was triggered, but I couldn't find any clues at all." "Don't worry, I will find a professional to deal with it." Kraft comforted Angela, then called Ancient One. "Didn't you say that Mephisto will be handled by the guy named Dr. Strange? How can he still find a chance to shoot Alice and Aurelie? That's what you Kamar Taj did." Kraft cursed at Ancient One as soon as the call was connected. Ancient One, who was on vacation fishing on a certain island, also looked dazed when she received Kraft's call, but she quickly extracted key information from Kraft's mouth. Ancient One opened a portal without saying a word and came to Kraft's side. After carefully examining the motionless Alice and Aurelie, Ancient One breathed a sigh of relief. Judging from the magical reaction remaining in the two bodies, they were only brought to hell by the simplest summoning contract. In this case, it should be too late. "I will go to hell to bring them both back, but you'd better lend me the soul gem." Ancient One turned his head and said to Kraft. "No problem." Angela on the side quickly summoned soul gem from her body and handed it over to Ancient One. Although Kraft wanted to go to hell with Ancient One, he also knew that he was not good at this, so he could only count on Ancient One. "You must bring them back to safety," Kraft sincerely asked Ancient One. "No matter how powerful the mechanical bodies of Alice and Aurelie are, they can only be replaced by souls." He suddenly remembered something. Aurelie seemed to be very critical in his soul state. "Oh, that's all right." Kraft instantly changed an extremely calm expression, and said to Ancient One, "When Aurelie has fun in hell, bring them back." Ancient One,